If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 266, Suitable for the Role. While Ctto Pictures was gearing up for their new superhero film project, they sent the script for the Spider-Man cast to Leonardo DiCaprio. In his apartment, Leonardo received the pre-read script, examining its front cover with curiosity. "It's about a superhero, hey?" Leonardo mused, stroking his chin and licking his lips as he enjoyed an apple. Turning the pages, he delved into the script, reading each page with interest. Finishing it while indulging in his apple, Leonardo couldn't help but remark, "The script is too simplistic, it lacks the character depth I seek." With that, he casually tossed the script aside. Leonardo found that the character of Peter Parker didn't quite align with what he was looking for. Peter Parker's portrayal as a nerdy outsider particularly concerned Leonardo. Additionally, a scheduling conflict arose due to Leonardo's later filming projects. Seeking more diverse and challenging roles to foster his growth as an actor, Leonardo desired roles that offered complexity. Unfortunately, the role of Spider-Man Peter Parker fell short of meeting his expectations. Had the portrayal of Peter Parker been challenging and complex, Leonardo would have considered accepting it, even if it meant cancelling his other schedules, especially given that the script and the Spider-Man film project were from Ctto Pictures. KRS-Two ringtone. Leonardo's KRS-Two phone rang, and upon seeing the caller ID as Tobey Maguire, he answered. "Oh, Tobey. What's up?" Leonardo greeted. "Leo, I'll be at your place. Let's play a video game in KS1, Mortal Kombat." Tobey's voice sounded. "Play a video game? Sure, I don't have much to do at this time anyway." Leonardo casually responded, watching the TV. During this time, he managed to catch the Toy Story teaser. The first ever 3D animated film? Made by Pixar and Ctto, hey. Leonardo commented as he glanced at the pre-read script of Spider-Man he had tossed earlier. After a while, Tobey arrived, and Leo welcomed him at his place. They headed to the living room, where KS1 was already connected to the TV. Leonardo and Tobey then played Mortal Kombat together. Following their gaming session, the two friends sat down with beers for a conversation. "You don't seem to get as many projects, hey?" Leonardo observed as he took a sip of his beer. Tobey nodded and replied, "Yet. Because of that, I've been drinking alcohol most of the time. You should take care of your health. You might develop an alcohol addiction." Leonardo expressed concern. "I might already have." Tobey admitted with a helpless chuckle. Leonardo looked at his friend, genuinely worried about Tobey's well-being. It seems that he is really going through a tough time, Leonardo couldn't help but think. Unlike himself, who had received numerous film projects, his friend Tobey appeared to be struggling. Suddenly, Leonardo recalled the Spider-Man film project from Ctto Pictures. Though fortunate to be considered for the role of Peter Parker, he found the script lacking and felt it wouldn't propel him toward the actor he aspired to be. Leonardo admired actors like Daniel Day-Lewis, driven by passion rather than profit. Considering Tobey might be interested in the role, Leonardo said, "Tobey, I have a script here from a well-known film studio. If you're interested, you can audition for it." He handed Tobey the Spider-Man script he had tossed earlier. Tobey examined the script, muttering, "A known film studio, hey." Seeing the title Spider-Man and the film studio, Ctto Pictures, Tobey's excitement and curiosity surged. "It's from Ctto!" he exclaimed, looking at Leonardo. "Yeah, it was." Leonardo smiled, well aware of his friend's admiration for Ctto, fostered by their shared pastime of playing Ctto video games and enjoying blockbuster films produced by the company. Ctto Pictures had become a prominent name in Hollywood, drawing the interest of many actors, actresses, directors, and writers eager to connect with the studio. As Tobey read through the script, turning page after page, excitement welled up in him. "Leo, I think I can do this!" he exclaimed. "Oh, yeah? If you want it, go for it. Audition for the role and give it your best shot," Leonardo encouraged with a smile. "But isn't this your opportunity?" Tobey couldn't help but express his concern, realizing that the script was originally intended for Leonardo. The situation left him feeling a bit conflicted. Leonardo observed Tobey's concern and assured him, saying, "Don't worry." Pausing for effect, he added, "I don't like the role, it doesn't suit me." Leonardo nodded, providing Tobey with further reassurance. "Really?" Tobey questioned, looking to his friend, and Leonardo nodded again with a reassuring smile. Besides, I have a tight schedule with another film project offer, so don't worry about me, Leonardo said, smiling. In that case, I'll take it, Toby replied, relieved. He jokingly added, no taking it back now, don't regret it later. Haha, now that I think about it, with Kishin's success in film production, maybe I'll regret it. I take back my words, Leonardo quipped. Toby playfully responded, wanna take back the script? Haha, dream on. This is mine now. Dash. Meanwhile, at Kishin Pictures headquarters, the casting director received a call from Leonardo DiCaprio about rejecting the role of Peter Parker. Initially feeling a bit of pity, the casting director was surprised when Leonardo recommended his friend, Tobey Maguire, for the role. Upon hearing this, the casting director almost blurted out to Leonardo, "Mr. Suzuki, is that you?" Feeling quite complicated, he recalled that Tobey Maguire was also recommended by Shinro Suzuki. Now, even Leonardo DiCaprio was vouching for Tobey Maguire. What is so special about Tobey Maguire? The casting director couldn't help but utter after ending the call with Leonardo DiCaprio. Chapter 267, Hand Gesture Name? At the Kishin Pictures headquarters conference meeting, the casting director voiced confusion, "I don't understand." Initially, Mr. Suzuki suggested Tobey Maguire, but we leaned towards Leonardo DiCaprio for Peter Parker. Yet, DiCaprio just called, turning down the role and recommending Maguire. Is this some joke orchestrated by Mr. Suzuki and DiCaprio? Well, Mr. Suzuki likely wouldn't have time for such pranks. It must be a coincidence, Sam Raimi mused, stroking his chin. Indeed. Initially, DiCaprio was Mr. Suzuki's top choice for Peter Parker, with Tobey Maguire as the backup, added Stan Lee. Well, I guess you're right. There's definitely something about Tobey Maguire that Mr. Suzuki and Leonardo DiCaprio saw, the casting director mused, stroking his chin. I heard that Leonardo and Tobey are friends, so it's not surprising. Maybe it's just a coincidence, a writer chimed in. Yeah, let's just see Tobey's audition and decide, another writer suggested. Most of them nodded in agreement, and Stan Lee added, maybe the world is telling us that Tobey Maguire could be a perfect match for Peter Parker. Some found this reasoning sensible, while others still thought Leonardo DiCaprio would have been a cool Peter Parker. Well, I can see a nerdy side of Tobey Maguire fitting the role of Peter Parker, Sam Raimi nodded in agreement with Stan Lee. Dash. At Kishin Rule's headquarters in the chairman's office, Shin learned of Leonardo DiCaprio's refusal of the Spider-Man role and his recommendation of Tobey Maguire. Shin smiled, shaking his head, and here I thought I could finally see Leonardo DiCaprio as Spider-Man in this world. It seems luck isn't on our side. Shin drummed his fingers on a sheet featuring a schematic diagram illustrating the electrical components and connections within the device, a blueprint for a specific gadget labeled with the letters GBA in English. Dash. After finalizing the Shinro Suzuki interview transcripts and selecting a suitable photo for the cover, undergoing editor review and approval, they proceeded to decide on the cover layout for the magazine. The cover featured an image of Shinro Suzuki seated confidently, making a triangle gesture, known as Merkle Rot in Shin's previous life, conveying a sense of power. The headline read, "From Ashes to Glory, The Rise of Kishin and the Revival of Gaming." In bold letters at the top, it proclaimed, "The Mastermind." Below, the cover featured Shinro Suzuki's words from the interview with Jenna, "Most people in this world don't appreciate video games as much as I do. I felt the need to express my passion for video games and let the people of this world know the charm of video games." The editor-in-chief and others nodded in approval as they reviewed the dummy cover featuring Shinro Suzuki for the next issue of Forbes magazine. The term dummy cover referred to a prototype of a magazine cover. "This photo alone could capture the attention of many women," remarked a senior management member with a smile. "Indeed, as a woman, I find Shinro Suzuki's photo quite cool. He looks like the handsome young boss from my dreams," added a female executive. The photo of Shinro Suzuki sitting in his chair exuded a cool vibe, particularly appealing to girls and women. Moreover, Shinro Suzuki's triangle of power hand gesture added a mysterious and imposing touch, leaving a strong impression on men who viewed it. "What's that hand gesture? Fingertips touching each other, and the thumbs and index fingers of each hand forming a rough diamond shape," commented one executive as they examined the photo of Shinro Suzuki. "Indeed. I sensed power and control just from that hand gesture." "Power and control? From my perspective, Shinro Suzuki's hand gesture exudes confidence. Well, for me, the hand gesture signifies strength and determination. The executives and senior management couldn't help but express their diverse opinions on Shinro Suzuki's hand gesture. It seems that the hand gesture evokes different feelings and interpretations. Yet, I believe it will truly offer readers a variety of emotions and interpretations. The hand gesture alone could elicit a positive response, the editor-in-chief said, stroking his chin with interest. You're right. I feel the same way, agreed one of the executives. Wait. Shouldn't we add another word for the cover dedicated to that hand gesture? Like the triangle of power. I disagree with triangle of power. How about triangle of confidence? That's lame. Think of a better name for that hand gesture. The editor-in-chief remained silent as the executives and senior management debated the name for the hand gesture. Meanwhile, Shin was enjoying time with his child, Shinichi, completely unaware that his hand gesture from the Forbes photoshoot had been named by the Forbes executives and senior management. If he were aware, he could only shake his head, recalling that the hand gesture he had casually used became incredibly popular, evolving into a meme in his previous life. For the meantime, Shin remained focused on the research and development of the handheld console, Game Boy Advance. The extensive research efforts had a significant impact on the research team. Concurrently, as the handheld console research advanced, the cellular phone technology that Kishin and Apple had been exploring also made substantial progress. It became evident that Kishin's influence hastened the global progress of technology, particularly in the realms of phones and handheld video game consoles. Chapter 268, Forbes cover. In Forbes headquarters, after a while, the naming of the hand gesture of Shinro Suzuki was named the Triforce. It was suggested by an employee who's been playing Kishin video games. When the higher UPS asked why he suggested such a name, he just said it was because of the video game The Legend of Zelda, and there's a triangle element named the Triforce. After a bit of research done by Forbes, they decided that the name the Triforce was indeed suitable. Then it was decided to finally publish it after some changes. Let's see the latest fashion in Vogue magazine. A young woman named Julia, wearing fashionable clothes from 1994, was with her friends to see the latest fashion in magazines at the newsstands. I like the fashion featured in L2, Julia's friend Casey said. Let's go take a look, another of Julia's friends suggested as they searched for fashion magazines at the newsstands. Then, Julia saw a magazine cover that made her exclaim a bit, ah. Her friends looked at her with confusion, Julia almost attracting the people around the newsstands. Julia also noticed it, that's why she covered her mouth, and then whispered to her friends as she pointed to a magazine cover, saying, "Look! He's so handsome." Casey and the others turned to look at the magazine cover Julia had pointed to, and then they saw that it was actually the Forbes magazine on the front shelves. On the Forbes magazine cover was a handsome man, seemingly Asian. The man has sharp yet beautiful eyes, finely shaped brows, and lips forming the arch of a smile. He sits comfortably in a cool position, with hand gestures befitting his cool demeanor and a face that is both fit and handsome. Wow! Who is he? Casey couldn't help but exclaim softly. He's so handsome. Another one of her friends nodded. Yet. Is he a new actor? I haven't seen him before. He looks familiar to me, though. But he's so handsome. Julia's friends couldn't help but discuss. Right? He looks like an Asian handsome boss. Julia couldn't help but chuckle as she spoke. Looking closely at the Forbes magazine cover, written in bold letters was, "The Mastermind." And then the headline, "From Ashes to Glory, the Rise of Kishin and the Revival of Gaming." The man's name on the cover was also written in small letters beneath the bold letters of the Mastermind. It read, "Shinro Suzuki, a Japanese man who changed the world." After that, Shin's quote from the interview was also added to the cover, "I remember a time when people thought video games were just a fad. But I never doubted their potential. I knew they had the power to connect people, transport them to different worlds, and tell incredible stories." Just below Shin's hand sign, another word was written, the Triforce hand sign from the mastermind of an industry. Looking at the cover and reading the words alone piqued the curiosity of Julia and her friends. What is this? It seems to relate to video games, Casey couldn't help but mutter. Julia nodded and said, "Yeah, and his name is Shinro Suzuki? A Japanese. So, he's a hot Japanese." Another friend of Julia nodded as she took the magazine. "Let's get this. I've never been so interested in video games, hee. Casey said with a smile. My boyfriend has been talking a lot about video games, and I just pretend to listen most of the time. Haha, same. If my boyfriend weren't so attractive, I might have left him for being a video game geek. We're in the same boat, hey. Julia's friends couldn't help but discuss with each other as Julia and Casey glanced at each other a bit helplessly, being single and without boyfriends. A day after the new issue of Forbes with Shinro Suzuki on the cover was published, it attracted the attention of some women. Gamers, whether men or women, also came to know about Shinro Suzuki being featured on the Forbes magazine cover. Some male and female gamers who were subscribed to Forbes were a bit surprised when the new issue was delivered to their mail. Shinro Suzuki? From ashes to glory. Robert Johnson, who had been following Kishin's latest updates for years and became a video game fan, quit his previous job and established a video game magazine publishers. After founding his company, Robert struggled at first. However, since he was more dedicated to video game research and had extensive experience in the latest news regarding the leader of the video game industry, Kishin, Robert's magazine company slowly rose in sales. With funding from angel investors, he was able to persist and finally succeeded in establishing his own business. Thanks to this success, Robert has his own team in Japan focusing on the latest releases from Kishin. Additionally, he has an account on Kishin's website to stay updated on the latest topics within the video game community, whether it's the Japanese, European, or American gamers community. Now, Robert has just received a report from his employees that the Kishin founder, Shinro Suzuki, was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. Robert immediately bought it to verify if it's true. Sure enough, after examining the Forbes magazine cover, he saw Shinro Suzuki sitting with a distinctive hand sign. Robert felt that the hand sign was quite mysterious, as Shinro Suzuki's hands formed a gesture conveying confidence and power. Then he noticed that the hand sign was named, the Triforce. Robert couldn't help but smile and muttered, "Isn't that right? It's actually the Triforce from The Legend of Zelda, hey." He wasn't surprised, considering it was Shinro Suzuki, the hand sign in the photo must be connected to video games. It seems even the Forbes editors noticed it was indeed the Triforce from The Legend of Zelda. Simultaneously, Robert genuinely felt that the hand sign was kind of cool. He could imagine using such a gesture to appear cool and couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. Next, Robert read Shinro Suzuki's interview and the evolution of video games, highlighting Kishin as a major contributor to innovations in the industry. While not entirely surprised, Robert considered seeking consent from Forbes to borrow some quotes and information for his magazine company. After all, some quotes might be under Forbes licensing. Chapter 269, Triforce Sign. The latest Forbes magazine cover featuring Shinro Suzuki quickly captured the attention of many gamers in the USA. The bold letters proclaiming the mastermind gave off a vibe, making Shinro appear like a comic book supervillain in the eyes of gamers. Haha, Forbes is treating this dude like a supervillain. Carl, a gamer, chuckled while observing the formidable figure of Shinro Suzuki on the cover. Really? I think he looks kind of cool, especially with that hand sign, the Triforce, shared George, expressing a different opinion. Yeah, that hand sign does look cool. When we take a photo, I'll copy that hand sign, agreed their friend Joseph, attempting to mimic Shinro's pose. He turned to his friends and asked, "How do I look?" Carl and George burst into laughter as they watched Joseph attempt to imitate Shinro Suzuki. "Why are you two laughing?" Joseph asked, furrowing his brows. "It just doesn't suit your figure, bro." Carl chuckled. "Maybe rest your hand on your stomach like Shinro Suzuki," George suggested, trying not to laugh. When Joseph followed the advice, George couldn't help but chuckle, saying, "But your stomach was a bit too chubby." "Ugh. You two are both ugly idiots too," Joseph retorted. Since the release of the Forbes magazine cover, several newspapers have also featured the new issue. Prominent publications such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today have published articles and photos covering Suzuki's feature and accompanying interview. These pieces often emphasize his wealth, Kishin's dominance, and Suzuki's vision for the future of video game development and technology. Not only did newspapers' publishers feature the latest Forbes magazine, but several television networks also highlighted it in their news programs. TV channels like ABC, CBS, and NBC discussed the significance of the Forbes cover and delved into Shinro Suzuki's interview contents. Tech analysts provided insights into the implications of Suzuki's leadership in the video game industry. The coverage extended to examining the speculated conflicts in Shinro Suzuki's relationship with his father, the chairman of the Suzuki Group, as well as Shinro's initial struggles when founding Kishin. Even radio, including talk shows and news programs, engaged in discussions about Shinro Suzuki's Forbes cover and interview. They explored Shinro's views on technological advancements in the future, interviewing tech experts and offering analyses of Suzuki's ascent to prominence. The attention garnered wasn't limited to gamers, it also extended to people interested in technology and its future prospects. Shinro Suzuki's vision shared in the Forbes interview, particularly regarding the future of the Internet and cellular phones, captured widespread interest. While some tech experts believed Suzuki's perspective on cellular phone technology and the future of the Internet was plausible over a decade, they were skeptical about the rapid pace of advancement he predicted. The notion of the Internet becoming commonplace for almost 100 million people within a few years raised eyebrows among certain tech experts. While they acknowledged the potential for significant advancement, achieving such widespread usage in just several years seemed highly unlikely from their perspective. While some tech experts were skeptical of Shinro Suzuki's predictions regarding the growth of Internet users, others aligned with his views, anticipating a significant increase beyond common expectations. Regarding Suzuki's perspective on the advancement of cellular phones, some tech experts remained doubtful about whether the industry would undergo such profound changes that it becomes unrecognizable compared to today. Surprisingly, there were also tech experts who agreed with Shinro Suzuki's unconventional views on future technologies. This divergence of opinions led to a heated debate during a radio news talk show, where two tech experts discussed the possibility of Suzuki's predicted technological advancements, one expressing agreement, while the other remained skeptical. Major channels like CNN featured the latest Forbes cover and highlighted Shinro Suzuki, focusing on his interview and insights into video games and technology. The coverage emphasized the dramatic aspects of Shinro Suzuki's relationship with his father to attract more viewers. The early struggles of Shinro Suzuki, starting in a small apartment, received increased attention. Speculations arose about how Suzuki persisted through challenges and paved the way for his success. It seemed as if Shinro Suzuki was portrayed as someone who went from rags to riches, attracting numerous viewers due to the legendary narrative of his life. Similar to other wealthy and successful individuals like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, who began their journeys in small garages, Shinro Suzuki started in a small apartment. The fact that Shinro Suzuki also dropped out to pursue his dream mirrors the paths taken by the famous Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, both of whom focused on technology, albeit in the computer industry, while Shinro Suzuki ventured into the video game industry. Some viewers, who were also college students, contemplated dropping out to start their own businesses after being inspired by figures like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Shinro Suzuki. However, upon reflection, they rejected the idea, realizing they might not possess the genius of these iconic individuals. With the story of Shinro Suzuki gradually spreading throughout the USA over a few weeks, his distinctive hand sign began to attract attention. Some individuals, predominantly men, started adopting the Triforce hand sign, even politicians incorporating it into their photographs and interviews. This increased usage led to a growing recognition of the Triforce hand sign. Gamers, in particular, began discussing it on the Kishin community website, speculating that Shinro Suzuki might be hinting at the release of another sequel to The Legend of Zelda, given the significance of the hand sign. Non-gamers, however, held a different perspective on Shinro Suzuki's Triforce hand sign. On various website forums, users started speculating about the meaning behind this hand sign. During this time, Americans were immersed in various conspiracy theories, having recently speculated about the Resident Evil T virus. In 1993, during Bill Clinton's presidency, there was even a conspiracy theory surrounding the reappearance of the Phantom helicopter, suggesting increased activity during his presidency and administration. It is intriguing to imagine how Americans might weave conspiracy theories around Shinro Suzuki's Triforce hand sign, which was gaining attention at that time. Chapter 270, GBA Progress. In Japan, Minato Ward, Kishin Rules headquarters, Shin, who watches the cable US channel, just saw in the news that the hand sign he frequently used in the Forbes photoshoot is gaining attention, with some politicians now adopting the same hand sign. I hope the Americans don't come up with any ridiculous ideas about the hand sign I used. Shin chuckled, shaking his head. You mean the Triforce hand sign? Myra, who was beside him, remarked. That's what they named it. Shin said, smiling faintly. Forbes was clever to name it after The Legend of Zelda, the Triforce. Myra said, looking at Shin and then teasing, did you suggest they name it that way? Or did you really base that hand sign on the Triforce from The Legend of Zelda? Hearing that, Shin felt a bit conflicted. He certainly couldn't admit that he had merely used the well-known hand sign from his previous life, known as the Merkle Rot. Reflecting on it, he simply nodded and replied, "Yeah. You're as thoughtful as ever." Promoting The Legend of Zelda in such a way, Myra said with admiration. She continued, "Now the hand sign is so popular that even some politicians in America are using it." "Yeah." Shin nodded with a forced smile, catching Myra's attention, prompting him to provide an explanation. After elaborating for a while, Shin excused himself and decided to visit Kishin's research lab. In a dedicated building for Kishin research, Shin stepped out of the car, catching the attention of men in black suits guarding the building. Once they recognized Shin, they respectfully bowed their heads. It's really convenient to have the Yakuza guarding the research lab building. Shin couldn't help but think. The Yakuza closely guarded Kishin's research labs across Japan, ensuring no one dared to interfere with these areas. Initially hesitant about involving the Yakuza due to potential government opposition, Shin found the protection invaluable. The reason why the Yakuza forces could openly guard Shin's business unfolded like this: after Shin instructed the Amauchigumi leader to cease their illegal activities, he didn't anticipate that the Yakuza gang would genuinely halt their illicit operations. Witnessing the Yakuza struggle with the loss of key ventures, such as clubs, red light establishments, and gambling enterprises, Shin suggested to Obu to initiate a security business. Even though the Amauchigumi ceased illegal activities, they maintained connections and, with Kishin's funding, retained their forces. Leveraging the Amauchigumi's connections and Kishin's assistance, the gang managed to establish a security business, seemingly defying government regulations. The Amauchigumi's security business earned accolades from clients, and the government began viewing the gang in a new light, although maintaining a vigilant stance. While the Amauchigumi security company served various clients, the majority of their forces were dedicated to guarding Kishin's enterprises. Additionally, the gang's highly trained forces were specifically focused on Kishin's businesses. This is why it's nearly impossible for larger companies like Tora and Suzuki to infiltrate Kishin. Even if they manage to do so, they can only access Kishin's lower levels, unable to obtain confidential projects. As a result, espionage efforts by Tora and Suzuki bear no fruit. Moreover, with Yakuza guarding and providing intel, the lone spy from Tora, who became Shin's secretary, was identified from the start, giving Tora false hope by placing their spy as Shin's secretary. Near the door of the research lab building, Shin observed a line of highly trained guards bowing to him as he approached. He acknowledged them with a nod before entering the automatic sliding door. Inside the lab, several tech researchers greeted Shin. "Mr. Suzuki." A Japanese researcher bowed upon seeing Shin. Curious, Shin inquired, "How is the progress of Game Boy Advance?" With the assistance of other professionals, Shin created the blueprints, possessing the idea, outline, and design of the GBA. He submitted the design to the research team in December of 1993. The initial rough and outline blueprints evolved as the research progressed. Over time, the improved GBA blueprint brought the research closer to completion. Shin's knowledge from his previous life proved valuable in aiding the researchers to finalize the handheld device. Currently, Shin is already expecting a prototype. "This is the incomplete GBA, Mr. Suzuki. It's not yet the finished product, lacking the expected long battery life and featuring a lower screen resolution than our target. Occasionally, the buttons become unresponsive after a week of use," explained the researcher, presenting the incomplete GBA to Shin. Nodding, Shin held the incomplete GBA and inserted a cartridge. The Tetris game loaded, revealing playable functionality but with a notably poor screen resolution. The battery life was decreasing after just 10 minutes of play, and the brightness wasn't adjustable as initially intended. "It still needs more improvement." Shin returned the incomplete GBA to the researcher and asked, "When is the estimated completion for the GBA?" "It's not precise, as we may encounter challenges, but we estimate completion in about 8 months to a year. During that time, we'll optimize the device, the processor, the battery, and its resolution, aiming to meet Mr. Suzuki's expectations," the researcher replied politely. "I see." Shin sighed slightly, realizing that playing GBA with his child might have to wait for a while. Chapter 271, Video Games Industry Progress. KS1 video games slowly grew, and the library of games for the console expanded, allowing gamers to choose from a variety of options provided by video game entertainment companies. The video game collection for TSX Fusion also increased, and these games were also playable with KS1. While TSX Fusion gained popularity and featured exclusive games by Toru Suzuki, it still trailed behind KS1 in sales. Exclusive games for KS1, developed by Kishin and other companies, were of high quality. Despite TSX Fusion's superior graphics performance, KS1's exclusive games optimized and maximized the console's hardware, giving KS1 a perceived edge in performance and graphics. In the ongoing competition to attract more customers, the Japanese video game industry continued to grow. At the Kishin store in Tokyo, Japanese PC gamers flocked to purchase the new PC game Doom 2. It was the sequel to Kishin Doom, which gained worldwide fame as a PC game. The most successful video game on PC, its estimated sales reached around 2 million units. Popular in Japan, gamers from both consoles and PCs were excited when the sequel to Doom became available. Doom 2 also introduced online multiplayer through the Kishin Play software, making it even more appealing to those who wanted to engage with real players rather than computer opponents. However, with only thousands of players currently online in Japan, connecting to others could take several minutes or even half an hour. Despite this, online gamers found alternative ways to entertain themselves while waiting. Even though Doom 2 allowed only 4 gamers per game, connecting with others remained a challenge. Since the game was released just a few days ago, there were only about thousands of players in Tokyo, as some gamers had recently started buying the PC game Doom 2 from Kishin stores. Kishin wasn't the only one introducing PC games. Toru and Suzuki also produced their own PC game developed in VG Engine. In the Toru Suzuki game department, the game developers using VG Engine proved to be quite useful. This software is truly a blessing. With it, game production has significantly reduced, sighed Seiki Kao, a game developer at Toru Suzuki Game Production, expressing relief. Right? It's indeed a useful program. The game engine already contains elements, objects, and tools essential for video game production. Yet, but we still need to develop and add our own asset creation for our game. Hearing his colleague's conversation, Seiki Kao nodded and added, We also need to incorporate our own data structures, variables, and other constructs at the core of the tools for this game engine. It feels like, by adding this data to the software, we are actually improving it over time while using it. It's only normal. That's the exchange the higher UPS made so we could use this software, remarked one of Seiki's colleagues. Agreed, and besides, the more we improve it, the easier it will be to use later. Seiki's colleagues concurred with this perspective, while Seiki himself nodded in agreement. But what they failed to realize was that the higher UPS at Toru Suzuki were oblivious to the fact that they were generously contributing to the improvement of Kishin's software while paying Kishin for it. The data sent by Toru Suzuki to enhance the VG engine was then transmitted back to Kishin headquarters, where the software developers swiftly integrated it into the system. Data structures, variables, and other constructs at the core of VG engine tools were received daily by Kishin from various video game entertainment companies using the VG engine. Additionally, Kishin updated the VG engine software used by video game entertainment companies on a monthly basis. With Kishin's monthly updates and the continuous improvement of VG engine with each release, the time required for video game production using VG engine was noticeably reduced due to the evident enhancements in VG engine. Some video game entertainment companies began to notice the remarkable improvement in the VG engine, prompting curiosity about how Kishin achieved the development of such advanced software in a relatively short period. Meanwhile, in the game developers department of Kishin Trademark, a new game project is being developed more efficiently with the enhanced game engine. They are also utilizing Kishin's latest and superior software, the Unreal Engine, incorporating code and data from VG Engine. The Unreal Engine, notably advanced, is capable of special effects and 3D CGI animations, benefiting Kishin's CGI company and Kishin Pictures film projects. With the assistance of Microsoft, a leading company in advanced software development, the Unreal Engine is gradually evolving into a game engine for 64 or 128-bit consoles capable of handling complex 3D games. Currently, the game department of Kishin Trademark is working on a project centered around thugs and crimes, aptly named by boss Suzuki as Grand Theft Auto. The game is designed for KS1 and the Microsoft operating system. The game developers working on this project were notably cautious, considering they were developing a game that wasn't very family-friendly. Kishin is widely recognized as a family-friendly video game company, known for donating children's video games to charity. Although they had a few exceptions like horror games such as Resident Evil and some violent and gore-filled games like Doom and Mortal Kombat, in general perception, Kishin maintained a positive image. However, with a game that openly explores themes of crime and thugs, the developers themselves were uncertain about how the game would be received. Chapter 272, Pushing an Industry. Kishin and Microsoft have been developing PC and KS1 games together, such as Descent and Battle Arena Tuns Hinden, etc. The games library for PC was growing by the day, attracting people who owned a PC to buy games for their computers. As a result, it boosted sales for PCs and the Microsoft OS altogether, further benefiting the industry. Meanwhile, Amazon was also starting to incorporate the selling of video games, besides books. The sale of books on Amazon significantly helped Rookie Bookstore in the rise of sales. With video games being sold on Amazon, supported by Kishin, the company gradually gained more customers, especially gamers. As Kishin was the major shareholder of the Amazon platform, they marketed Amazon to expedite the research and development of the algorithm data Jeff is seeking. Improving the algorithm data of Amazon was expected to contribute to the growth of customers and traffic on the site. So far, it was working, as Amazon received visits from thousands of users each day. While it might not be much, the algorithm data gathered from these users was continuously improving, potentially turning thousands of users into hundreds of thousands in about a year or so, given the advancements in the Internet. The Internet was growing, and Kishin recently acquired WorldCom in the USA, an Internet provider. As a struggling company, Shin decided to acquire it to improve Internet service in the USA. A few weeks after the acquisition, Shin used his knowledge from his previous life to enhance the Internet service. WorldCom employed community-driven optimization resources, sharing knowledge and best practices among users to foster innovation and help individuals optimize their dial-up connections within the limits of their specific lines. Additionally, having WorldCom employ the data compression that Shin specifically provided with an LZMA algorithm, compressing data before transmission, could enhance efficiency and speed. Since the latest computers developed in this world are as advanced as 1996 or 1997, the LZMA data compression algorithm is feasible with the current hardware capabilities. The Lizziv Markov chain algorithm, LZMA, was learned by Shin in his previous life while exploring the basics of the Internet as a hobby. The same applies to dynamic compression, which also utilizes the LZMA algorithm. Adjusting compression levels according to the algorithm can optimize performance for different types of data. The CEO and executives of WorldCom, executing according to the parent company Kishin's will, were shocked when they gradually realized that such algorithm that's provided by Kishin could significantly improve and optimize their Internet speed. Just 2 months after Kishin acquired WorldCom, during a conference meeting, most of our customers, through surveys, were quite satisfied with our service after being acquired by Kishin. Well, what can you expect? Most of the problems our company faced were efficiently solved by Kishin with their funding, and thanks to Kishin's suggestions, our service improved. I really don't know how Kishin could come up with such ingenious ideas. It's as if they're more experienced in being Internet service providers than us. An executive couldn't help but stroke his chin as he spoke. Yet, like the data compression algorithm, dynamic compression algorithm, and so on. Our engineers thought that what Kishin is presenting is just a theory, but for such methods to actually work is fascinating. A Ctto couldn't help but exclaim. Don't be too shocked. It's a well-known Japanese company, after all. Kishin must have executed such methods in Japan with their research, the middle-aged CEO, Lucio Rock, said. I guess that makes sense. I wonder how much further research Kishin has done in Internet technology. Well, let's discuss the prioritized infrastructure suggested by Kishin again. Investing in fiber optic cables. This technology provides significantly faster speeds and greater capacity compared to older copper cables. I guess it's kind of obvious why we need to prioritize such technology. Expanding network coverage and developing alternate connections. I'm not gonna lie, I am quite excited about this development. It will take a long time before realizing this, and it will really improve the ISP industry. Just from this, we can see the ambitions of Kishin in the Internet industry. The rumors about Kishin's ambitions of wanting to bite off more than it could chew were real after all, haha. Bite off more than it could chew? Well, Kishin seems to have the capability to chew, after all. We couldn't say for sure, but I lean towards your thoughts. The executives and key figures of WorldCom were genuinely interested in Kishin. Initially, they thought Kishin was mindlessly acquiring their company, but as time passed, it seems that Kishin has an extensive plan for their company, and they didn't hate it at all. In fact, excitement was an understatement. WorldCom, an internet service provider, executed a lot after being acquired by Kishin. This included providing internet access to public libraries and community centers. These institutions lacking technologies have been supported through the Kishin Foundation. After that, the Kishin Foundation, along with the internet service provider WorldCom being advertised through the foundation, launched awareness campaigns, educating the public about the internet and promoting safe and responsible usage in schools across the USA. Since it posed no harm, the states approved of the Kishin Foundation and WorldCom's actions. What is interesting is that the Kishin Foundation even provides training and resources to help people learn basic digital skills, which can increase internet adoption and usage. The WorldCom executives would have genuinely considered Kishin a pure philanthropist if they hadn't known Kishin's ambitions beforehand. The WorldCom executives are contemplating that all of the actions Kishin Foundation is taking are part of the grander plan Kishin is preparing. They eagerly look forward to a day when WorldCom and Kishin Foundation's current efforts will be rewarded in the future. Until now, WorldCom has become subordinate to Kishin, even causing the ISP company to align with the philanthropic actions of Kishin Foundation. I hope this people will become internet addicts later. Shin grinned jokingly as he looked at the images and reports of the philanthropic actions of WorldCom and Kishin Foundation in the USA. All of these efforts by Shin are just a hope that more Americans will become familiar with the internet. The increased number of internet users in the USA will benefit WorldCom, improve the internet industry, and possibly expedite the process of internet development. Chapter 273, Monopoly. In the Kishin HQ, within Shin's office, a CD cover featuring a 2D drawing of a man with a mustache, top hat, tuxedo, monocle, and cane sits on the table. Curious, Myra couldn't resist asking, "What is this video game?" Shin proudly responded, "It's our new PC and KS1 game we recently completed," presenting the Monopoly game he developed with Microsoft. Myra and Lee Han examined the CD cover, and Lee Han read the name aloud, Monopoly. Shin nodded, expressing nostalgia, "I wanted to share this game with those close to me, so we could play together." "Play together?" Myra inquired, intrigued. Upon hearing Shin's desire to play with those close to him, Lee Han felt touched but politely asked, "Mr. Suzuki, am I included?" Shin, with a chuckle, reassured, "Of course, you're included," patting Lee Han on the shoulder. "I've known you for years, after all." Lee Han couldn't help but smile at the gesture. In the Kishin Game Developers Department at Kishin Rules headquarters, Shin, Myra, and Lee Han entered a bustling room dedicated to game development. Upon their arrival, the game developers greeted them politely before returning to their work. They've grown accustomed to Shin's regular visits to the game department. "Good morning, Boss Suzuki," greeted the video game director with a respectful bow. "Mr. Hajime, my wife, my friend, and I are here to play the recently finished game, Monopoly," Shin announced with a subtle smile. "Monopoly? That game is awesome!" exclaimed Yuta Hajime, leading Shin, Myra, and Lee Han to the game testing section where computers were lined up, and people were engrossed in testing the game. Cough, Yuta Hajime coughed, subtly reminding the testers to focus on their task instead of casual gaming. The testers, initially treating it as a mere cough, shifted to a serious demeanor upon realizing it was the video game director and Boss Suzuki. They greeted Shin with a bow before diligently testing the game. Beside Shin, Myra chuckled at the scene. "They seem very serious about their job," she whispered to Shin. Shin smiled faintly, observing the seriousness, while Lee Han maintained a solemn expression. "Here, Boss Suzuki and Lady Suzuki," Yuta Hajime led them to unoccupied computers. Shin and the others powered them on and launched the game Monopoly. A few game developers in the testing section were treated to the sight of their boss, Shin, seated at a computer with his wife and a middle-aged man beside him. A few game developers who approached closer overheard the boss explaining the game mechanics to his wife and the middle-aged man. "What's Boss Suzuki doing here? I heard from Director Hajime that the boss is here to play the Monopoly game." "Really? That game? I didn't know the young boss would give so much attention to such a game." "Of course, it's one of the boss's ideas, after all. There are so many good video games with the boss's ideas, but it's the first time I've seen him play a video game with his wife and an executive in the company." "Well, that PC game can be played in multiplayer, after all. Yet, multiplayer makes the game more interesting to play. While the game developers discussed among themselves, Shin, in the midst of explaining the game to Myra and Lee Han, opened the Monopoly game through MS-DOS. Myra and Lee Han did the same, and after opening the game, the Monopoly introduction played out, with the animation unfolding and the catchy soundtrack playing. Myra nodded to the beat, humming along to the Monopoly game's soundtrack. Following the animation on the table featuring cards and a paper with the word Monopoly, the options menu appeared. Myra inquired about the international options, specifying whether to play with American, British, French, etc. cards. Shin adjusted her options, with Yuta Hajime guiding Lee Han through the process. Afterward, Shin clicked New Game in the File section and added players based on the names of the computers Myra and Lee Han were using. With the setup complete, it was finally time to start the game. Each player received $1,500. "Watch me bankrupt you, Shin," Myra declared with a faint smile. "Let's see," Shin replied, rolling the dice. As the car-shaped game token moved on the board, it landed on an unowned property Connecticut Avenue, priced at $120. The animation of the deserted place played out. Seeing this, Myra chuckled, "You want to buy that? I'll offer you $20. What do you think? $20? You're such a cruel capitalist, honey," Shin smiled at the offer. "Look who's talking. I heard you bought an internet service provider company in the States," Myra joked. Now, you're getting personal," Shin sighed, then turned to Lee Han, saying, "Han, I'll give this property to you for $300. What do you think?" Lee Han, with narrowed eyes, responded, "$300? That's too much for such a deserted property, what about $50? Shin smiled, "Oh right, you're also quite skilled in negotiations, Mr. Han." Then added, $150. $55, Lee Han stood firm. $149. $70. $140, final offer. All right. After reaching an agreement, Shin took action on the computer to transfer the property to Lee Han. Observing this, Myra snorted. Meanwhile, the game developers and testers watching their higher UPS play the Monopoly game found it quite interesting. As Shin and the others delved deeper into the Monopoly game, their absorption was such that they failed to notice the many game developers observing their play. Adding to the intrigue, Shin found himself increasingly frustrated by the realization that he was losing, bankruptcy was looming. On the other hand, Lee Han's exceptional skills in the game brought a smile to the middle-aged man's face as he played with remarkable proficiency. "Hey! Don't tell me Lee Han is addicted to this game now." Shin couldn't help but ponder as he observed Lee Han's serious and engrossed demeanor in the gameplay. Chapter 274, Backstory. Shin introduced Monopoly to his employees, who swiftly added it to their list of leisure activities. Within days, the game gained immense popularity in the company. Walking through the building hall, Shin overheard employees discussing the game. "After our shift, shall we play Monopoly?" suggested a male employee to his colleagues. "Absolutely. Since the game is only on the company computers, looks like we'll be staying late. I hope I don't get in trouble at home." "Yet, my wife gets suspicious when I come home late," a man confessed, scratching the back of his head. The group chuckled at his predicament. "Don't worry, I'm sure others are in the same boat," reassured another employee. "Honestly, if we could live here, I'd move my family and never leave the building." "Same here." Listening outside the workplace through the wall, Shin couldn't help but smile at the employees' enjoyment. "They seem to be having a blast with the game you introduced, Mr. Suzuki," remarked Lee Han, appearing behind Shin. "Oh, Han," Shin greeted with a nod. "What's your take on the game so far, Mr. Han?" Upon hearing the question, Lee Han smiled and replied, "I won't deceive you, Mr. Suzuki. Playing that game made me feel a strong connection, like I had returned to the past playing games with my father." Shin smiled in response, nodding. "I see. It seems the game has resonated well with the people at Kishin." Lee Han nodded with a smile before inquiring, "Mr. Suzuki, I've been meaning to ask, when is Monopoly going to be released? I'd like to introduce it to my family in South Korea." Shin, upon hearing this, responded, "Your family, eh? The CD production is still underway, it might take about a week before it's released in Japan and the USA." Lee Han nodded, saying, "I see." As they walked down the hall, Shin suggested, why not bring your family to Japan? They can be entertained here at the headquarters, and you all can play during your free time. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Suzuki, but they're not keen on visiting Japan, Li Han replied, pausing before adding, managing the family business keeps them quite occupied, and I'm not even sure if they'd agree to visit. Surprised, Shin asked, your family owns a business? Li Han chuckled and nodded, saying, you're quite familiar with them, Mr. Suzuki. Really? Shin said, wearing a puzzled expression. What's the name of your family's business? With a smile, Li Han replied, it was the Samstar Group, Mr. Suzuki. Shin was visibly astonished. Your family owned that? Li Han nodded, explaining, indeed, though I'm just the son of the founder's brother, so they don't quite treat me as family. Nevertheless, you're still part of a wealthy family, and your family, Shin remarked, patting Li Han on the shoulder. I suppose so. Li Han nodded slightly. As they entered the elevator, Li Han began to share his story with Shin. It turned out that Li Han's father had been deemed unsuccessful by the Samstar Group's founder. Consequently, the founder's sons harbored disdain for Li Han's father. During family reunions, Li Han's grandparents would compare his father to the Samstar Group's founder. Even Li Han himself was compared to his cousins, who were considered successful due to their father's position as the chairman of the Samstar Group at the time. That's why, every year during the reunion, Li Han would sense his cousins' arrogance towards him, and they treated him as if he wasn't part of the family at all. Unlike you, Mr. Suzuki, the young masters in South Korea were arrogant enough to proudly claim their father's success as their own. Li Han remarked, injecting a bit of humor. I had no idea about your backstory, and I'm only learning it now after 5 years of knowing each other, Shin admitted. Well, it's just my story, and everyone has a tale to share in their life. But I understand that people often don't pay much attention to others' stories. They're too busy with their own lives, after all. Li Han said with a simple smile. Well, I certainly care about your story, Mr. Han. Shin smiled, offering comfort to Li Han. Thank you. I hope the game is released soon. The family reunion is approaching, and I want to introduce the game to my family, especially my daughter and son. Li Han bowed as he spoke. Your family reunion? You still participate in such gatherings? Shin asked, a hint of surprise in his tone. My father worked as a president in a Samstar subsidiary. That's why we were invited to the family reunion in the past. It wasn't just about comparing successes but also discussing business direction with the family. Now, my daughter works in the Samstar Group. Despite the discrimination we faced in the past, the Han family prioritizes family ties over outsiders, Li Han explained with a smile. Does the family reunion also include business discussions? Shin couldn't help but think of the Suzuki family gatherings, which often involved business talks. At every reunion Shin attended, business discussions were inevitable. Moreover, business figures who weren't part of the family were often invited to engage in talks during the gathering. Yes, Li Han nodded. The family knows I work in Kishin, and they're interested in meeting you. They even asked me to invite you to the reunion. Really? Shin responded thoughtfully. Those cousins I disliked in the past are surprisingly kind when asking during phone call. They act differently when they see a use for someone. If you don't want to meet them, I understand. Well, I'll consider it, Shin interrupted, stroking his chin as he headed to his office, leaving Li Han slightly surprised but nodding nonetheless. Chapter 275, KP Progress. In addition to the production and manufacturing of the Monopoly CD game by Kishin and Microsoft, Kishin Merchandise also manufactures the physical game box unit containing cardboard, cards, dice, money, chance, and community chest cards, essential for playing the Monopoly game. The 3D animation advertisement for Monopoly has already been showcased in Tokyo and the United States. The ad features a humorous transition from the animated world to real people engaging in a Monopoly game on a tabletop. The animation, with its amusing portrayal, captures the essence of Monopoly, and as it transitions to people playing on the cardboard table, the narrator exclaims, "Monopoly! A delightful, ruthless pursuit of wealth every day." This advertisement is particularly appealing to the US audience, given the popularity of cardboard games during this time. The catchy image of the Monopoly mustache man, adorned with a top hat, monocle, and cane, adds to the catchy appeal to the people who saw the logo. Apart from playing the game physically, one can also enjoy it on PC and KS1 by purchasing it from the Kishin store. The longtime followers of Kishin were intrigued when they discovered that a cardboard-based game had been adapted for PC and KS1 gaming. Within a few days, the Monopoly CD game for PC and KS1 experienced a surge in sales. However, gamers had varying opinions about the game. Some were dissatisfied with the limited AI or computer opponents, finding them too predictable and lacking in strategy. Nevertheless, players had the option to engage in matchmaking through the KP software, though the matchmaking process was time-consuming due to the recent release and a growing player base. Certain PC gamers, accustomed to the immersive online features of games like Warcraft, patiently awaited the Monopoly game's expansion in player numbers before diving in. The KP software's utility attracted thousands of Warcraft players, leading to a steady increase in PC online players and a substantial reduction in matchmaking wait times. Beyond Warcraft, other non-Kishin PC games also embraced the services of KP software to integrate matchmaking, facilitating the growth of online gaming possibilities. However, to utilize the KP software's services, video game companies must accept its terms and conditions. In return, KP software recommends online playable games to its users, and for this service, video game companies incur charges. These fees are willingly paid due to the noticeable growth in sales and player engagement of this entertainment company's video games, fueled by the enticing online multiplayer features. Kishin extends its support by featuring non-Kishin video games on the Kishin forums, enhancing engagement for titles from other video game companies. With these services and promotional efforts, video game companies find the KP software terms and conditions agreeable. Kishin not only profits from CD sales but also benefits from agreements with video game companies. However, Shin recognizes that this marks just the initial phase of KP software development. In mid-August 1995, the groundbreaking 3D animated film Toy Story was set to premiere in New York. Through the collaborative marketing efforts of Disney and Kishin, the film attracted a substantial audience, particularly capturing the attention of Disney's young fanbase. Disney fans held high expectations for the upcoming animated film, especially with the notable voice talent of Tom Hanks, a renowned actor. The premiere buzzed with activity as directors, writers, and the Pixar team made appearances. The excitement reached its peak when Tom Hanks graced the premiere, prompting enthusiastic cheers from the crowd. Following the festivities, the audience entered the theater, and the screening commenced. The introduction featuring Walt Disney, Kishin Pictures, and Pixar set the stage. What catched people's attention was Pixar's simple yet memorable intro, featuring a jumping lamp replacing the eye. After that, the animation film unfolded with a boy engrossed in playing with toys, eliciting chuckles from the audience with his funny dialogue and imagination. As the child interacted with a cowboy toy named Woody, a musical piece accompanied the scene. It became evident that it was the boy's birthday as he engaged in a conversation with his mother. Subsequently, the boy left Woody on his room's bed, opting to bring a blonde baby toy along. In a surprising turn, Woody, initially lifeless, began to move, followed by the other toys in the room. The audience witnessed the toys engaging in conversation, capturing their interest, particularly in the scene where the female toy named Bo Peep flirted with Woody. Woody, appearing as the group's leader, displayed apparent concern about the upcoming birthday, revealing the toy's fear of being replaced by the boy named Andy's friend's presence. Gradually, the audience became engrossed in the film, finding the animation quality surpassing expectations. In contrast to behind-the-scenes commercials on Toy Story seen on television, the animation was top-notch. Some film critics in the audience sensed that this style of animation might become a trend, with Pixar likely leading the way. Unbeknownst to them, Kishin had gained significant experience and data through collaboration with the Pixar team. The Kishin Unreal Engine animation and special effects, beneficial for filmmaking, positioned Kishin alongside Pixar in the current landscape of 3D animation production. As the film progressed, the introduction of Buzz Lightyear heightened Woody's insecurities, leading him to attempt embarrassing Buzz. Doubting Buzz's ability to fly, Woody's plans went awry when Buzz actually soared around the room by coincidence. Amid Woody's efforts to reclaim the spotlight, a mishap occurred, and both toys ended up in the possession of a peculiar child. A pivotal scene unfolded as Buzz discovered his lack of uniqueness when a Kishin advertisement aired in TV, revealing countless Buzz Lightyear units with the caption, "Not a flying toy." This revelation shattered Buzz's perception, leaving him disheartened. The film continued, captivating the audience with its unfolding story. Even the adults, initially accompanying their children, found themselves engrossed in the animated narrative. Chapter 276, Initial Success of the Animated Film. In Haneda Airport, Shin and Li Han waited for their airplane at the art exhibit. So, the one who wants to see me is the chairman of Samstar Group? Shin pondered, looking at Li Han. Li Han nodded, that's right. It's my cousin, Han Woon-suk. Now that I think about it, what is your Korean name, Han? Shin inquired. My name in Korea is Han Liryu, Li Han replied. So your name is Han Liryu all this time and not Li Han, hey? Shin chuckled. Well, I'm in Japan, so I thought Li Han is much simpler. Li Han smiled. And because of that, when I first met you, I thought you were Chinese. Shin couldn't help but laugh. Chinese? I'm not surprised, in Taiwan, everyone thought I'm from China. Li Han chuckled wryly. Well, it's because it sounded like Li Han, and that indeed sounds Chinese. Shin smiled. Shin accepted the invitation to see one of the most powerful families from his previous life. Despite differences in names and surnames, he knew the Samstar Group paralleled a certain company that would control 20% of South Korea's GDP in the future. Shin anticipated that this company might surpass even the Suzuki Group, which he acknowledged was equivalent to Sony. Despite specializing in motors and cars, the Suzuki Group's vehicles were globally popular, with estimated sales of 2 million units annually and 8 to 10 million mini vehicles sold in Japan each year. Shin was uncertain whether Samstar would truly surpass the Suzuki Group, given Suzuki's ventures in various business sectors. But who could know for sure? Even with knowledge of the future, Shin couldn't guarantee that things would unfold similarly to his past life, as this world was a parallel one. Especially now that he was here, the future might unfold differently. His company, Kishin, and its affiliates were already making a significant impact. Companies like Nvidia, Apple, Amazon, invested in by Kishin, ensured a steady stream of billions in the future. Even if Kishin's primary business became average, these investments alone could provide Shin a comfortable life without actively working. Despite amassing billions, Shin wasn't driven solely by wealth. He dedicated himself to recreating games from his previous life and possibly creating original ones, advancing technology in this world with his knowledge. This became Shin's priority. In essence, even with ample wealth, he worked for a better future in video games, technology, and his company. Contributing, even in small ways, to society and human civilization was Shin's goal, beyond monetary success. Notably, Shin's overarching vision for the video game industry has yet to come to fruition. The likes of PSP or PS2 are non-existent, and the creation of PS3, PS4, and beyond, along with the rise of PC gaming, especially online gaming, is still on the horizon. With much to be achieved, Shin can't afford to rest. This world is yet to discover the genuine joy and challenges of playing video games, including the true pain of experiencing losing streaks. In the USA, the Electronic Gaming and Game Fans Game Ceremony plan was already in its final stages. They selected Carnegie Hall as the venue, aiming for an intimate and classical atmosphere for the Game Awards. With Kishin's support, organizing the Game Awards event at Carnegie Hall posed no difficulty. Moreover, with the Game Awards ceremony set to be televised through Kishin-affiliated channels, the organizers anticipated widespread recognition, given Kishin's backing and funding for the event's success. Following the premiere of Toy Story, the audience praised it, and TV channels sang its praises, highlighting the top-notch 3D animation quality of the film. Most film critics offered positive reviews, expressing admiration for the animation, story, and portrayal of the life of toys in Toy Story. Affiliated channels of Warner Bros. And Universal also praised the film, although their subtle grievances were evident due to Kishin's frequent mentions in the animation. For instance, in scenes like Woody and Buzz being in the Pizza Planet truck, the Kishin logo discreetly appeared just above the Pizza Planet logo, hinting at Pizza Planet's connection to Kishin. Even the toy manufacturer of Buzz Lightyear was revealed to be under the Kishin umbrella. This self-promotion tactic within the animated film irked higher UPS at Warner Bros. And Universal, given the existing tensions with Kishin. Due to the animated film's promotion of Kishin as the toy manufacturer of Buzz Lightyear, attendees at the premiere learned that Kishin indeed sold Buzz Lightyear toys. Kishin merchandise also offered complete sets of toys featured in Toy Story. While Toy Story had not yet reached wide screening, frequent visitors to Kishin merchandise occasionally spotted Toy Story toys and merchandise in the store. This exposure allowed people, even if they didn't make a purchase, to become aware with Toy Story. Most customers that didn't even watch the animated film yet, were enticed to buy Toy Story toys because of their appealing designs, particularly capturing the interest of children who had not seen Toy Story yet. The animated film's premiere, coupled with TV channels praising it and positive word of mouth, led to a slight surge in Toy Story merchandise sales. However, the president of Kishin Merchandise anticipated that sales would experience an even greater surge after the nationwide screening of the Toy Story animation film. Chapter 277, Han Family. Shin and Lee Han finally reached Seoul Gimpo Airport. "Is your family already waiting for you here?" Shin inquired as they walked towards the airport with Lee Han. Lee Han nodded, replying, "Yes, my wife and daughter are already in the arrival lounge." Shin followed Lee Han into the airport arrival lounge. Upon entering, people seated on comfortable sofas turned to see if Lee Han and Shin were the ones they were waiting for. Realizing they weren't, the onlookers ignored them. Lee Han scanned the lounge and spotted his wife reading a newspaper while her daughter played on a Game Boy. Turning to Shin, Lee Han gestured for silence. Shin, initially confused, observed as Lee Han quietly approached the two women seated at the end of the arrival lounge. The older woman wore fashionable clothes and accessories. The pretty young woman, seemingly Shin's age, sported a beret hat, a short skirt, and long sleeves. Choi Mis-hyeol, a middle-aged woman, awaited her husband's return while engrossed in a newspaper. It covered the news of the Japanese government building's demolition in Seoul, which commenced on South Korean Liberation Day, August 15, 1995. Choi Mis-hyeol believed it was the right decision, given her parents' deep-seated hatred for the Japanese due to the war. Although she, like many South Koreans, harbored contempt for the Japanese, her feelings began to wane as her husband started working in Japan. Despite her reluctance to see her husband leave for work in another country, especially for Japan, they had no other option. The feud between her husband and his cousins at the Samstar Group, coupled with his initial job as a janitor in a random company, brought disgrace to the Han family, pushing him to seek better opportunities abroad. Fortunately, the decision to work in Japan turned out to be beneficial. Within a few years, Choi Mis-hyeol's husband rose to the position of a manager in a mall, significantly improving their lifestyle. Each time Lee Han, her husband, returned, he shared stories of his experiences in Japan. While Choi Mis-hyeol's contempt for Japan diminished, she still had reservations about visiting the country, except for her daughter. In 1990, when her husband revealed that he had quit his managerial position in the Japanese mall for a job in a small company, Choi Mis-hyeol berated him. However, as time passed, that small company evolved into a major player, gaining recognition even in South Korea before the ban on certain Japanese products. Remarkably successful, her husband's company became a notable presence, even catching the attention of the Samstar Group, which began distributing its products. The fact that her husband ascended to a high executive position in that company filled Choi Mis-hyeol with pride. Their lifestyle improved significantly. They acquired a spacious house, a car, and enrolled their children in a better school. Choi Mis-hyeol indulged in luxuries like gold earrings and fashionable clothes, earning her the title of Madam among friends. Their transformation from once humiliated, poor relatives in the eyes of her husband's cousins at the Samstar Group became a pleasant sight for them. The Samstar Group even employed her 23-year-old daughter, Han Soo-yoon, starting her off as a sales associate. Despite her daughter's age, she had a hobby playing video games. Choi Mis-hyeol attributed this to her husband's influence, bringing home products like consoles and video games. Consequently, both her daughter and son became gamers. At this moment, her 23-year-old daughter was engrossed in playing a video game on a Game Boy, one of the products from her husband's company. Choi Mis-hyeol chose to ignore it, opting to read the newspaper. Suddenly, a hand gripped her wrist, prompting a frown. Ready to utter a curse, she looked at the person holding her and was taken aback. Exclaiming, "Dear!" She caught the attention of Han Soo-yoon. "Dear!" Amused by his wife's surprise, Lee Han chuckled, saying, "Haha, I thought you were about to curse me with the expression you initially showed." Choi Mis-hyeol playfully nudged Lee Han and asked, "Why would you surprise me like that?" "Haha, it's because you're not paying attention. I am already so close, yet you didn't notice me." Lee Han laughed. "I am reading a newspaper, so I didn't notice." As they conversed, their daughter Han Soo-yoon exclaimed, "Dad!" and eagerly hugged Lee Han. She excitedly inquired, "Did you bring some games?" Lee Han chuckled wryly, remarking, "You're so engrossed in playing on the Game Boy that you didn't notice me either. You really take after your mother." Choi Mi-seil and Han Soo-yoon burst into laughter at Lee Han's comment. While chatting, Choi Mi-seil noticed Shin just behind Lee Han. She turned to him and quipped, "Are you the chauffeur? Wait for my husband's baggage instead of observing our little reunion." Initially thinking his wife was talking to someone else, Lee Han realized she was addressing his boss. Panicking, he abruptly ignored his daughter and forcefully pulled his wife away, he momentarily forgotten that he had brought his boss along. Meanwhile, Shin, hands in his pockets, observed Lee Han's family reunion. Since they were conversing in Korean, he couldn't understand. After a minute, the middle-aged woman in fashionable attire seemed to address him in Korean. Confused, Shin asked Lee Han, who was still reeling from pulling his wife forcefully, "What did she say?" Upon hearing his boss inquire, Lee Han awkwardly expressed in Japanese, Nothing, cough. This is my wife, and this is my daughter." Instead of elaborating, he gestured towards his wife and daughter to introduce them to Shin. Choi Mi-seil and Han Soo-yoon, overhearing the young man behind Lee Han conversing in Japanese, then noticed Lee Han also engaging in Japanese conversation with him confused them. This prompted a slight frown from Choi Mi-seil. Chapter 278, Intention. Choi Mi-seil frowned and nudged Lee Han discreetly. Feeling the nudge, Lee Han chose to ignore it. He turned to Shin and introduced his wife, Choi Mi-seil, and his daughter, Han Soo-yoon, in Japanese. "Mr. Suzuki, this is my wife, Choi Mi-seil, and this is my daughter, Han Soo-yoon," he gestured towards them. "Oh, nice to meet you, Mrs. Han, and Lady Han," Shin bowed slightly in a formal greeting. However, since Shin spoke Japanese, only Han Soo-yoon, Lee Han's daughter, could grasp the essence of Shin's words. Upon hearing his boss's greetings, Lee Han smiled and remarked, "Well, Mr. Suzuki, my wife's surname is Choi, but I suppose Mrs. Han isn't bad either." Shin nodded in response, stating, "I see. It seems like it's different here in Korea." Lee Han, acknowledging this, then overheard his wife asking, "Who is this young man, husband? Isn't he your chauffeur?" Curiosity also struck his daughter, Han Soo-yoon. "He isn't a chauffeur. He is my boss, the owner of Kishin." Lee Han hastily clarified in Korean. Choi Mi-seil and Han Soo-yoon, initially curious, were shocked at the revelation. "He is Shinro Suzuki." Han Soo-yoon couldn't help but exclaim. Lee Han nodded, and witnessing their astonishment, Choi Mi-seil, who had mistaken Shin for a chauffeur, immediately bowed towards him, saying, "Annyeonghaseyo." Han Soo-yoon followed suit. Observing the exchange, Shin understood they were greeting him and reciprocated with a polite, "Annyeonghaseyo." Amazed at how the attitudes of the two women changed so quickly, Shin thought Lee Han must have informed them of his identity. "Why didn't you say he was your boss immediately? If he understood Korean, do you know how embarrassed I would be?" Choi Mi-seil whispered to Lee Han, adding, "I'm already feeling embarrassed even though I know he doesn't understand me." "Ha ha ha, don't worry. Even if my boss knew what you said, he'd forgive you," Lee Han reassured his wife. The happy reunion of the Lee Han family was somewhat restrained by Shin's presence, especially making Han Soo-yoon shy. Despite Lee Han's assurance, Choi Mi-seil decided not to make Shin too uncomfortable. As they headed to the airport baggage claim area, with Shin following behind Lee Han and his family, Han Soo-yoon whispered to her father, "Dad, I don't know Japanese. Can you tell him that I loved his video games?" Looking at his blushing daughter, Lee Han replied, "Why are you acting strange? I already told Mr. Suzuki while we traveled here." Han Soo-yoon became more embarrassed upon hearing her father's words. Observing this, Choi Mi-seil said in a hushed voice to Han Soo-yoon, "Soo-yoon still doesn't have a boyfriend. If you want, you can introduce your daughter to your boss." "Mom." Han Soo-yoon felt increasingly embarrassed with her mother's comment. Lee Han, hearing his wife's comment, felt a bit awkward as he glanced at Shin, who was curiously looking around the place. "I already told you when I returned a few months ago, right? Mr. Suzuki is already married. He also has a child." Lee Han clarified to his wife. "Yeah, but what if their relationship isn't working? You can pave the way for your daughter." Before Choi Mi-seil could continue, she was interrupted. "Stop. Never talk that way. Never play with our daughter's future, and especially discussing such things about Mr. Suzuki, even in his presence. Don't do that again," Lee Han rebuked his wife with a serious expression. Then he added, the purpose of Mr. Suzuki being here is for business, he's not here to play around. Sigh, all right. What a pity, Choi Mi-seil sighed. Stop it, Mom. I don't have feelings for Dad's boss, I just admired his video games a lot. Han Soo-yoon explained. Enough about that. Let's talk about the video game I brought. It's the recent release from Kishin. Lee Han changed the topic. Oh. What is it? Han Soo-yoon's spirit also lifted hearing that. One of the cool video games I brought is called Monopoly. Trust me, this video game will not disappoint, it's perfect for family bonding. Yay! Where's the game? It's in my baggage, we'll pick it up at the baggage claim area. I can't wait. Han Soo-yoon couldn't help but say. There's also a physical version of that game, it's a perfect game to play, especially during outings, Lee Han said with a smile. As the family of three conversed, Shin listened in curiosity, though he didn't understand a thing they were saying. After retrieving their baggage from the claim area, Shin and Lee Han proceeded to Han Soo-yoon's car. Sitting in the back seat, Shin couldn't help but ponder Samstar's technologies at this time. Though it was still behind, Shin knew that in certain technologies such as LCD technology, Samstar would be quite advanced in the future. Even though Shin possesses future knowledge, it doesn't mean he had a complete understanding of LCD and other future technologies. If he did, the LCD research on the Game Boy Advance would have been completed instantly. Beyond Samstar's LCD research, what Shin was truly interested in, the reason for accepting the invitation, was Samstar's semiconductor technology. Semiconductors held immense importance, extending their influence across various industries, including game consoles. Kishin also delved into semiconductor research, focusing on CPU and GPU for the KS1, thanks to their collaboration with Rebold Technology. However, the research was gradually slowing down. Shin recognized that without his insights into the future of video game development, Suzuki and Torum might have already developed a 64-bit console through their semiconductor research. Fortunately, Tora and Suzuki weren't overly fixated on the video game sector. Instead, they unwittingly fell into Shin's trap, relying on his software for video game production. Currently, Samstar, although lagging behind some Japanese companies in semiconductor technologies, is gradually gaining ground in semiconductor research, particularly in DRAM. Chapter 279, Upcoming Gathering. Shin followed Lee Han to his family's house, as Lee Han served as his guide in South Korea. The Han family reunion was scheduled for 2 days, so Shin would likely stay at Lee Han's family's house during this time. Despite the option of staying in a hotel, Lee Han insisted on hosting Shin at his family's house. Surveying the Han family's home, Shin couldn't help but think, the house of Han's family isn't bad. It seems Lee Han even tried to replicate the design of my house in Minato. When Lee Han visited Shin's house for business discussions, he often looked around and asked about the inspiration behind Shin's home. It turned out Lee Han wanted his house to mirror Shin's exactly. What do you think of my house, Mr. Suzuki? Lee Han smiled, scratching the back of his head. This house is inspired by yours. I can see that, Shin replied with a smile. Even the display of Kishin IPS toys, action figures, and video games in the living room was an exact copy, leaving Shin with a wry smile. Soon, Shin, Lee Han, and his family gathered in the dining room. What does he think about our house, dear? Choi Mi-seil asked as she prepared the meals. He's satisfied. The house architecture was actually inspired by his own house, Lee Han replied with a smile. Really? Choi Mi-seil said in slight surprise before adding, I only prepared this, I didn't expect your boss to come along. Don't worry. Mr. Suzuki isn't the type to care about such details, Lee Han reassured his wife with a smile. As they conversed, Lee Han's son, Hong Kong Dae, returned home from school. Mom, I'm back. A young man's voice echoed, and shortly after, a young man in a school uniform appeared in the living room. Spotting Lee Han, he exclaimed, Dad! And promptly went over to hug him. After the reunion, Hong Kong Dae turned to Shin and asked, Who is he? Before Hong Kong Dae could finish, his mother, Choi Mi-seil, interjected, He's your father's boss. Shinro Suzuki. Upon hearing this, Hong Kong Dae became astonished and exclaimed, Whoa, for real? He was about to approach Shin for an autograph, but his mother stopped him. Don't bother Mr. Suzuki, Choi Mi-seil sternly reminded, and Hong Kong Dae nodded in understanding. Han Soo-yoon joined them at the table, and they conversed while eating. Shin remained quiet, unable to grasp the conversation. After the meal, Li Han requested an autograph from Shin. Confused at first, Shin noticed the eager expressions on Li Han's son and daughter. They must be fans, Shin thought, smiling. It appeared that Li Han had shared Shin's story with them, explaining their admiration despite Shin being Japanese. In the USA, after a 2-day screening of Toy Story, thanks to Kishin Pictures' involvement, the box office surpassed Shin's previous life. An impressive $14 million in 2 days marked a significant success. Kishin CGI enhanced the animation, offering the audience a slightly improved experience compared to Shin's previous life. Kishin's marketing efforts and the bold decision to distribute Toy Story in screenings contributed significantly to the box office results. In Shin's previous life, Toy Story, distributed by Walt Disney, opened with around 2,000 screenings. However, in this parallel world with Kishin as another distributor, the opening saw an increase to approximately 3,417 screenings. As a result, the predictions of Reynold MacArthur, the president of Kishin Merchandise, became a reality, with Toy Story merchandise experiencing a significant surge in sales. After 2 days, Shin was finally ready to meet the Han family, the controllers of the Samstar Group. Shin understood that just as there was a communist leader in the north, there were powerful chaebols in the south. Unaware of the intellect of the people he was about to meet, Shin arranged for his security team from Japan to assist him upon landing in South Korea, Seoul. Indeed, it was the Yakuza that transformed into the Yamauchi Securities Company, now an independent entity affiliated with Kishin. Even Li Han and his family were somewhat surprised to see a line of 5 black cars waiting at their doorstep. Initially, Li Han thought it might be his cousin orchestrating a high-profile entrance to impress Shin. However, Shin himself reminded Li Han that the lined-up cars and the Japanese men in black were, in fact, Shin's security team. Mr. Suzuki, why the need for such a high profile? Li Han asked with uncertainty, his family also astonished and a bit intimidated as they stepped out of the house. You mentioned your cousins being quite arrogant, right? As a third generation of a wealthy family, I should at least present a sight befitting my status, Shin joked. Li Han furrowed his brows, as in his opinion, Shin wasn't the type to boast. Seeing Li Han's expression, Shin explained further, I arranged this to gain some respect from your cousins, who value status and wealth. This show of security might leave an impression on them, helping our business discussions. After hearing the explanation, Li Han nodded thoughtfully, thinking, I guess that's reasonable. After a while, with the astonished expressions of Li Han, his wife and children, Shin invited them to enter the cars driven by his security team. Despite the language barrier during Shin's stay at Li Han's residence, they managed to exchange conversations through Li Han, making it comfortable for them to enter another car under Shin's security. They entered the car, with Shin and the others followed closely by additional vehicles, one of them leading the way. As they made their way towards the Samstar Group gathering, onlookers curiously observed the procession of black, luxurious cars lining up and moving along the road. Chapter 280, Gathering. At the Samstar headquarters' spacious hall, an elegant yet luxurious party was taking place. Tables around, with men in expensive suits and women with beautiful dresses. The waiter walking around to serve wine or water, and server delivering meal to the table. There's a stage that is projecting an image, showing was the business directions of the conglomerate. People discussing seemingly happily yet restrained to act elegant. This is the Han family reunion, yet it seems to be business gathering instead. The people invited to the gathering was an important figures or chaebol families of the conglomerates such as Hyun Lotters, Lucky Gold Group, Lottie, and such. Han Woon-suk is happily discussing with the chairman of Hyun Motors, who happens to be his brother-in-law. Since Han Woon-suk's sister was arranged marriage to the Hyun Motors. Han Yoo-jin was his sister and his sister's daughter, Rim Mi-jin. As Han Woon-suk was discussing with Rim Hee-yang, the current chairman of Hyun Motors, his secretary suddenly entered the hall and whispered something to his ear. Really? Han Woon-suk said with a bit of surprise, and he saw his secretary nodding. Yes, Mr. Chair. 5 black cars just stopped by in front of the building's entrance, and the ones that walked out from it was Mr. Han Liryu and his wife, daughter, and son. They're seemingly heavily guarded by men in black suits, especially, the young man that is with Mr. Han Liryu was seemingly more of importance since the man in black suits are even covering him from the sun with an umbrella. The male secretary nodded as he whispered to Han Woon-suk. Then the secretary added, he said, currently, they're being delayed by the staff, especially the young man that is with Mr. Han Liu. The young man must have been of importance and needed a welcome from someone in the Samstar group. Han Woon-suk, who heard that, became quite serious and said to his secretary, "Let Jin Sang welcome his uncle, and let Jin Sang handle it and to see who is the young man with that Liu. If I am not mistaken, that young man must have been the one I personally invited through Liu." He couldn't help but smiled in the end. "Understood, Chairman." The male secretary nodded, and then went to the eldest son of the chairman, Han Jin Sang. Han Jin Sang is currently entertaining a young damsel, that is also a chaebol family. He flirted with the beautiful yet cute woman. He said, "Your reputation as the most beautiful woman in Seoul never disappoints. Every time I looked into your eyes, I gradually found myself losing it." The young woman named Zhang Yun simply flashed a captivating smile and said, "You really know how to flatter, Jin Sang SSI. SSI is Mr. ... As Han Jin Sang was about to respond, his father's secretary suddenly interrupted and whispered something in his ear. "Ugh, I have some business to attend. Yosa is Ms. ... Han Jin Sang said awkwardly to Zhang Yun before following his father's secretary. While Zhang Yun, who looked at the departing figure of Han Jin Sang, simply snorted lightly. Han Jin Sang couldn't help but complain as he followed his father's secretary. He said, "Damn it! You can handle it, why do you need me? Why do I have to greet that uncle of mine?" "Doli Yanim, young master, it was the chairman himself that wanted you to greet your uncle, and also the young man being accompanied by your uncle seems to be an important figure, and the ones that should welcome such figure should also be an important figure of the Samstar group, to show our sincerity." The male secretary, the secretary of Han Woon-suk, explained. "I don't get it. We're Samstar group. We don't need to handle guests like that even if they're important." Han Jin Sang couldn't help but complain as he said. "That's why your father sent you," the male secretary secretly thought. At the same time, he was also curious about the young man that was accompanied by Jin Sang uncle. 5 minutes ago. Meanwhile, the guests that's just entering the Samstar headquarters were quite surprised by the high-profile line of black cars. The guests were quite curious and they saw intimidating men in black stepping out of black cars and opened the door for someone. Shin, Li Han and his family walked out of the car as the men in black opened the doors for them. The guests that's invited to the Samstar group gathering was just a bit surprised to see such a scene. After all, they're holding a status of their own. After walking out, Shin, guided by Li Han, walked towards the headquarters, where they're entertained by the staff. Shin was just quietly observing as Li Han was having a conversation with the staff in Korean language. After a while, Shin was gradually getting a bit impatient as he sat comfortably at the sofa. His guards was standing and was looking around, seemingly alert. The guests that's being led by the staff towards the hall, looked at Shin that's sitting as if he was on a trip, and the men in black were seemingly protecting Shin. Although the guests have some background, they couldn't help but be a bit astonished at the scene that some of them looked for a long time or turned for a second look. They were curious of the young man's identity. As Li Han was getting impatient due to waiting for 5 minutes in the waiting area, he saw his nephew entering the scene. "Uncle." Han Jin Sang flashed a fake smile and hugged Li Han. "I am terribly sorry for making you wait," Han Jin Sang said apologetically. Although Li Han knew that it was just a fake show of apology. Then, Han Jin Sang looked at Shin, who is also looked at him. Seeing the several guards around Shin, he smiled and said, "And who is this young Sir B?" Although he actually recognized Shin and he was actually quite shocked inside. It was the man featured in Forbes. Han Jin Sang couldn't help but thought, then he added with a thought, "No wonder father wanted me to personally welcome him." Li Han, who asked Shin, is simply introduced and said, "He is Mr. Shinro Suzuki." Han Jin Sang, who heard that, acted surprised and said, "Wow, really? He is the man behind video games." Then he paused as he added, he said, "He can't understand Korean, right? Please tell him that we welcome him in Samstar group." Then Shin stood up after Li Han translated what Han Jin Sang has said. Then afterwards, Shin nodded and spoke in Japanese. Chapter 281, Each Other's Proposal. After discovering the young man's identity, Han Woon-suk flashed a slight smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Suzuki. I still can't believe that such a young man built Kishin into a significant business," Han Woon-suk remarked, glancing at his son, who flinched. Upon hearing Li Han's translations, Shin simply smiled and humbly said, "Luck played a big role in my success. When the translations reached Han Woon-suk, he chuckled, saying, "Haha, the Japanese are known for their humility, but your humbleness, Mr. Suzuki, is truly something." Shin, upon hearing the translations, continued to smile. Other guests noticed the chairman of the Samstar group conversing with a young man. Some approached to eavesdrop, and Zhang Yun joined Han Jinsang's side. With no response from Shin, Han Woon-suk added, "Unlike my son, who still relies on me, I hope he possesses the same abilities as you, Mr. Suzuki," genuinely smiling at Shin. Surprised guests and Zhang Yun looked at Shin and then at the embarrassed Han Jinsang. Annoyed, Han Jinsang thought, "Why embarrass me like this, father?" Li Munhee, Woon-suk's wife, overheard but observed quietly. Shin, hearing the translations, reassured, "You don't need to compare your son to me. I'm sure he has something special, like the rest of us." Guests Zhang Yun and Li Munhee were surprised to hear Li Han speaking in Japanese, followed by the young man referred to as Mr. Suzuki by the chairman also conversing in Japanese. They were astonished that the chairman of the Samstar group entertained a young man from Japan, speculating that he must be someone with an exceptional identity. "Jinsang SSI, who is that man?" Zhang Yun inquired of Han Jiwu, who remained silent and listened to Li Han's translations. He has something special in him, just like the rest of us? Is he implying I'm average like everyone else?" Han Jinsang misunderstood Shin's words. "Just because you're accomplished due to your family's wealth, the Suzuki family, doesn't mean you can act smug here." Han Jinsang thought, glaring at Shin. Observing Han Jinsang's darkening expression, Zhang Yun decided not to ask him. Han Woon-suk chuckled at Shin's comment and agreed with his words. "Mr. Han Woon-suk, I'm here because I heard you wanted to see me. What is your purpose for inviting me?" Shin asked directly, noticing that Han Woon-suk seemed to be engaging in pointless conversations. Upon translating Shin's words to Han Woon-suk, Li Han's family, the guests, and Han Woon-suk's wife and son were astonished by Shin's frankness. "I like that, you're quite direct," Han Woon-suk smiled, sipping his wine. "Liu, let's move to that private area for confidential discussions." Shin heard Li Han's words. The chairman of the Samstar group seemed interested in a private discussion. Shin nodded, sparking curiosity among the guests, speculating it must be business-related. Han Myung-ki, the vice-chairman of Samstar group, scrutinized his elder brother and the young man. As they headed to the private room, he narrowed his eyes in observation. In the private room, Shin took a seat on the sofa. Li Han was surprised as he watched Han Woon-suk personally serve Shin a glass of wine from the table. "What's the deal with those guys?" Han Woon-suk asked Li Han, glancing at the intimidating men in black accompanying Shin. After Li Han translated Han Woon-suk's concerns to Shin, Shin nodded and instructed the man beside him to leave. The man hesitated briefly before walking out of the room. After the man exited, Han Woon-suk continued, "As you can see, Mr. Suzuki, we are also venturing into the mobile phone business. However, over the years, the KRS models have been gradually outpacing the Samstar models." Shin heard Li Han's translation and smiled faintly, thinking, "Of course. KRS models were modeled after the successful Nokia in my previous life and were quite advanced in technology." Then Han Woon-suk added, "Mr. Suzuki, I'll offer you a favorable contract for distributing Kishin consoles and games. In return, if you sell the technology rights that Kishin possesses, specifically the parts used in the KRS models with Rebold technology, we'll buy them at an appropriate price." Upon hearing this, Li Han frowned slightly. When he translated it to Shin, both Li Han and Han Woon-suk were surprised to see Shin maintaining a calm expression. "I cannot agree to that, but I can offer you licensing and, if you wish, a joint research on phones, with Kishin and Samstar developing phones together. In return, Samstar must allow us to engage in joint research in semiconductors and grant us licensing rights in Samstar's semiconductor technologies," Shin said with a smile, surprising even Li Han. "What did he say?" Han Woon-suk asked. Upon hearing Li Han's explanation, he chuckled, as if he had heard the most ridiculous proposal in the world. "That's a lopsided deal for us. Semiconductors are among Samstar's most advanced technologies, and you want to collaborate on semiconductor research? Are Kishin's mobile phone technologies even worth it? Will they match our semiconductor technologies? Even Toshiba is surpassed by us in semiconductors," Han Woon-suk sarcastically remarked. Observing Li Han's hesitant translation, Shin wasn't surprised by Han Woon-suk's reaction. He smiled and continued, "Of course, that's not all, Mr. Han Woon-suk. Your Samstar company, highly profitable in electronics, radios, TVs, computers, and home appliances. Overall, I have a subsidiary company, RealSoft Company, with technologies that could prove invaluable and potentially achieve global reach in the future. I propose granting Samstar licensing rights and even engaging in joint research on this technology together." This was Shin's alternative strategy to acquire Samstar's technological advancements. It would be advantageous if they pursued joint research, allowing Shin to grow in technological research alongside Samstar. RealSoft Company, initially unprofitable even years after Shin's investment, was eventually fully acquired by Shin after its owner, Nathaniel Walsh, sold it. Shin intended to leverage RealSoft's potential to persuade Samstar to agree. After Lee Han translated his proposal to Han Woon-suk, the middle-aged man visibly became interested. Chapter 282, Cheap Tricks. Han Woon-suk showed genuine interest and asked, "What kind of technology is it?" Upon hearing Lee Han's translation, Shin elaborated, "It's the IoT, or Internet of Things, a network of interconnected physical devices embedded with sensors, software, and other technologies that enables them to collect and exchange data over the Internet." Lee Han conveyed Shin's explanation to Han Woon-suk, who learned that the technology involved sensors and microcontrollers, low-power chips processing data from sensors and controlling connected devices. "We've already integrated this technology into our software, allowing communication through specific protocols. Just last year, we successfully incorporated IoT technologies into our industrial equipment and inventory management," Shin added. Upon hearing Lee Han's translation, Han Woon-suk remarked, "This technology seems incredibly useful." Simultaneously, he couldn't help but express admiration for Japanese innovations in technology. "We always seem to be playing catch-up. Even a relatively recent company like Shin has advanced significantly in just a few years," Han Woon-suk pondered. His thoughts also drifted towards the utility of the technology introduced by Shinro Suzuki to his electronic products. Han Woon-suk found himself in a quandary, struggling to decline these enticing technologies. Samstar, being a corporation aiming to rival Japanese companies in technology, sought global technological advancement. Faced with the prospect of a technology that could propel Samstar toward this lofty goal, Han Woon-suk felt the pull to agree with Shinro Suzuki's proposal. Observing Han Woon-suk's conflicted expression, Shinro Suzuki smiled. He was aware of Samstar's active research and development in various technologies integral to IoT sensor technology, microcontrollers, and communication protocols. Understanding that Han Woon-suk likely had these considerations in mind, Shinro knew the significance of Shin's IoT technology to Samstar's ongoing research and development efforts. Speaking to Lee Han, Han Woon-suk instructed, "Lee Ryu, assist me in negotiating with this young man." Aware that Shin couldn't comprehend Korean, he relayed the message to Lee Han. Lee Han furrowed his brows while looking at Han Woon-suk and asked, "What do you mean?" Han Woon-suk responded with an indifferent expression, saying, "You know what I mean. Assist me in securing the best deal in negotiations with the young man. You're from the Han family, after all." While Han Woon-suk spoke, Shin anticipated Lee Han's translation but noticed him frowning. Unable to comprehend Han Woon-suk's words, Shin observed, waiting to understand Han Woon-suk's intentions. "I apologize, Mr. Han Woon-suk. In business negotiations like this, familial ties hold no sway. Moreover, having worked in Mr. Suzuki's company, my commitment is to secure the best deal for Shin, not because of family connections but due to my role as a senior executive," Lee Han explained. Pausing, he added, "I am the chief operating officer of Shin Rules, not family, not your cousin." Upon hearing this, Han Woon-suk frowned at Lee Han, remarking, "You place excessive trust in this Japanese company. It appears you've forgotten their actions against our land, our people, and our parents, grandparents." Lee Han's expression turned serious as he asserted, "Shin has no connection to that. Let's refocus on the business talks." Han Woon-suk remarked, "Trusting outsiders, especially foreigners, over your own people and family is a grave mistake." "I'd rather trust Mr. Suzuki and his company than you or your corporation," Lee Han replied with a hint of contempt. Han Woon-suk frowned, cautioning, "Shin will discard you once you're no longer useful. Consider this carefully, Lee Ryu. Would you truly be more loyal to young Suzuki than to me, your own cousin?" Lee Han smiled confidently, countering, "Don't worry. Mr. Suzuki is unlike you, and Shin is not akin to your company. I know this from my experience working with them. Han Woon-suk's expression darkened, questioning, "Are you still harboring grudges against us from the past?" He scrutinized Li Han, who remained emotionally composed, continuing, "It seems your grudges have clouded your judgment, or Kishin has deceived you with position and a high salary. Think what you will. Let's return to the business at hand." "It's unrelated to emotions, it's purely business," Li Han asserted with a smile. Curious about their conversation, Shin asked Li Han, "What is he saying, Mr. Han?" "He wants me to employ tactics against you to secure a better deal in negotiations," Li Han revealed with a smile. Shin laughed, responding, "Ha ha ha, it seems he really wants the technology I presented." Li Han nodded, saying, "It's quite effective." While Shin and Li Han engaged in a cheerful conversation, Han Woon-suk observed, unable to comprehend their exchange. "What are his thoughts on my proposal? Will he agree?" Shin inquired, wanting Li Han to convey his words to Han Woon-suk. Li Han nodded and translated Shin's inquiry to Han Woon-suk. After a thoughtful pause, Han Woon-suk responded, "Let me think about it. I'll consider Mr. Suzuki's proposal." Li Han conveyed this back to Shin. Upon hearing Li Han's translation, Shin smiled and remarked, "It seems real soft technologies have truly tempted him. Now we wait." Shin paused, then directed his attention to Li Han, saying, "Mr. Han, I'd like you to handle the negotiations with the Samstar Group later." Li Han appeared surprised but then responded, "But I lack knowledge about that technology, and I'm not familiar with Kishin's cards as you are to fully utilize it in negotiations." Shin smiled and assured him, "I'll provide you with the files and documents you need for the negotiations." Looking at Shin, Li Han questioned, "Do you truly trust that I can perform well in negotiations, especially with Samstar, my family's business?" Shin replied confidently, "You're not under Samstar, you're under Kishin. I trust your ability to excel in negotiations." Li Han, touched by Shin's trust, couldn't help but feel moved. Chapter 283, Attention. After Shin had been in South Korea for a few days, negotiations between Kishin and Samstar were underway. Shin entrusted Li Han, equipped with the key employees of Kishin, to represent the company in the negotiations. Simultaneously, Han Woon-suk delegated the negotiations to the capable employees of Samstar Group. As the negotiations would take some time to finalize, Shin returned to Japan after a week and a half in South Korea. Naturally, he brought back souvenirs to later gift to Myra and their child. In Tokyo, Japan, the video game industry thrived, with various genres gradually permeating the market in the capital of the global video game industry. Over the years, the number of console gamers in Japan has grown to approximately 30 to 35 million, experiencing slow but steady growth. Beyond Japan, many countries, including the USA, Canada, the UK, and China, are capitalizing on the profitability of the video game industry. Additionally, the side-scrolling style, originating from Kishin, has been incorporated into numerous games produced by various video game companies. Whether it was a 2D fighting game, a 3D first-person shooter, isometric RPGs, or puzzle games with logic-based mechanics and engaging challenges, as well as sports games featuring realistic simulations with limited player models and animations, most of these genres drew inspiration from Kishin. The video games that introduced some of these genres first were actually able to do so because Kishin incorporated them into the toolkits and libraries provided to video game developers. Consequently, some video game companies, releasing their games on various platforms, paid Kishin higher royalty fees. Regarding the new consoles that have entered the video game market in recent months, despite KS1 and TSX Fusion expanding their game libraries, SKES video games gained more users than initially anticipated, not only in Japan but also globally. The 2D platforms proved to have a broader appeal to new players, leading Kishin to experience unexpected profits in the sales of SKES video games. This outcome surprised Shin and the executives when they first reviewed the report. In response to this success, Shin decided to continue releasing video games for SKES, ensuring they would also be available on KS1. Simultaneously, Tora and Suzuki recognized the increasing potential of video games. Consequently, the board members made the strategic decision to invest more effort in the development sectors of their video game projects. Idori Tanaka, Shiko Suzuki, Seiki Suzuki, Nico Tabata, and Taro Ikeda, the leaders of the Tora Suzuki Alliance, were exhilarated by this development. As a result, the research capabilities of Tora Suzuki significantly strengthened in the development of their next game console. Their expertise in semiconductors, including CPU, GPU, and other semiconductor technologies, surpasses that of Kishin, thanks to their concurrent development of computers and components. The only challenge for Tora and Suzuki lay in game console development, lagging behind their progress in computer development, particularly in hardware design. Although Tora and Suzuki were making swift strides in video game console development, Kishin was advancing at an even faster pace. Furthermore, Kishin possessed a deep understanding of gamers' needs and preferences, enabling them to tailor their hardware and software for a superior gaming experience. New entrants like Tora and Suzuki needed to bridge the gap between their research capabilities and the specific demands of the gaming market. Moreover, even if Tora and Suzuki made strides in advanced electronics research, catching up to and surpassing Kishin in game console development, Kishin had already nurtured a robust ecosystem of game developers and publishers. Developers were well acquainted with Kishin hardware and tools, streamlining the process of creating high-quality games for their consoles. New entrants needed to attract developers and provide tools to establish a thriving game library. For instance, the VG Engine software, utilized by Tora, Suzuki, and emerging video game companies, predominantly in Japan and the USA, was developed by Kishin. The VG Engine software, along with communication protocols integrated into Kishin's software suite, facilitated the transmission of VG Engine data from these companies to Kishin's databases. This exchange not only enhanced the VG Engine software but also played a crucial role in improving the advanced Unreal Engine. The video game industry remained unaware, but Kishin was steadily shaping the present and future of video game development, with 90% of companies in the industry contributing to Kishin's progress. As Shinro Suzuki's Forbes magazine cover gained recognition worldwide, some journalists researching the video game industry began drawing parallels. They felt that just as Microsoft holds a pivotal position in the computer industry, Kishin plays a similar role in the video game sector. However, a faction of journalists, disliking Microsoft and Bill Gates, extended their disdain to Kishin due to its partnership with Microsoft and Shinro Suzuki's comparable standing to Bill Gates. In Japan, Shin's fame as a tycoon surpassed even Yoshiaki Tsutsumi, the current richest person in Japan, who is a real estate tycoon. Some media outlets in the USA went so far as to dub Shinro Suzuki as the Bill Gates of Asia due to Kishin's dominance in the video game industry. Adding to the intrigue, the latest issue of Fortune revealed that Kishin is the current major shareholder of Apple. Furthermore, Kishin is a major shareholder in Revolt Technology, a recently publicized company. Unconfirmed reports also suggest Kishin holds substantial shares in other yet-to-be-disclosed companies, shocking many, including the Suzuki family. Chapter 284, Shin's First Wafus. In the Suzuki Finance CEO's office, Shiko currently gazes at the Forbes magazine cover featuring Shinro Suzuki and the latest issue of Fortune. Having just read the Forbes cover story on Shinro Suzuki and the latest Fortune issue, Shiko can't help but feel a bit shocked by his younger brother's remarkable growth. The rapid establishment and success of Kishin as a major company in just a few years truly amaze Shiko. The evident investments in other companies, including Apple, worth billions despite trailing Microsoft, showcase Kishin's financial prowess. Seiki, he's incredibly powerful now, isn't he? Shiko comments, gesturing toward Forbes and Fortune. Seiki, what if we start our own company? Shiko suddenly suggests, pondering the entrepreneurial success of his brother. Are you kidding? Seiki exclaims, noticing Shiko's serious expression. Establishing a business from scratch is incredibly challenging. We're doing well in the Suzuki Group. Shinro's luck doesn't guarantee the same for us. Shiko nods, sighs, and agrees, you're right. Our younger brother's luck is extraordinary. Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki of the Suzuki Group also comes across the Forbes cover and interview of Shinro Suzuki, initially considerably shocked. Ctto reacts, that young brat has quietly grown this much over the years. As he reads the Forbes feature on Shinro Suzuki, his wife is equally astonished, leading her to compare their son, Shoaki, to Shinro. Despite Shoaki introducing his wife to the family, including Samaza and Kumiko, the revelation of her pregnancy doesn't elicit much emotion from them. Ctto's parents, Sazuma and Kumiko, compare Shoaki to Shinro, now a billionaire. This dissatisfaction is palpable to Ctto and his wife. Due to this, Ctto aspired more than ever to acquire the Suzuki Group's shares and become its chairman. However, Shiro Suzuki remained vibrant and showed no signs of relinquishing the position anytime soon. During the Suzuki Group board meeting, Shiro discussed the business direction with the board. After the meeting concluded, as Shiro was leaving the room, some board members unexpectedly congratulated him. "Congratulations, Chairman Shiro. I must say, I envy you, Chairman." "Absolutely." The board members exchanged admiring comments, causing Shiro to furrow his brows in confusion. Amidst his busy schedule, he couldn't fathom why they were congratulating him. Perplexed, Shiro asked, "What does this mean? Why are you all congratulating me?" The board members exchanged glances before one explained, "It seems you weren't aware, Chairman. It's because of this." He presented 2 magazines, with Forbes on top. Shiro examined the magazine cover and remarked, "Forbes featuring my son? I already knew about that." Smiling, one board member said, "It's the other magazine behind Forbes." Shiro nodded, noticing the Fortune magazine. Initially confused, he sought an explanation from the board members. "Chairman, in the Fortune magazine, you'll see that your son is not only successful enough to be on the Forbes cover, but it explains just how remarkably successful he is." "That's right." Sigh. "I really didn't expect young Shinro to grow his company to this point. Yet, being the major shareholder of Rebold Technology, a successful phone seller since 1994 and even now, and the major shareholder of Apple as well, plus some undisclosed businesses. It's genuinely surprising. Yet, Chairman is really a good father to have a son like that." Shiro initially smiled at their words, but the last part made him feel ironic. "I don't think I'm a good father at all." Shiro couldn't help but think. In Tokyo, Japan, alongside the flourishing video game fan base, the anime fan community had surpassed it in size. Thanks to the current top-rated anime, Dragon Ball, reaching episode 146, the excitement among anime fans was growing. The storyline focused on Son Goku facing the green villain, Piccolo. Enthusiastic discussions unfolded among anime fans, and anticipation for what would happen next was high. The female fans of Dragon Ball were amazed to witness Kid Goku transforming into a grown young man. Some even speculated on Goku becoming Bulma's husband. Dragon Ball's revenue soared, with Kishin merchandise experiencing a surge in merch sales not only in Japan but also in the USA. The profitability of anime like Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Earthbound was exceptionally high. Despite this success, the majority of anime fans were still boys or men. While Pokemon attracted female fans, the overwhelming majority remained male. One contributing factor was the prevalence of male protagonists in anime, with themes and categories geared toward males. The scarcity of anime featuring female protagonists stemmed from societal norms in Japan, where males were seen as providers, females as housewives, reinforcing a culture that emphasized male superiority. That's why entertainment giants like Nippon, Tora, Suzuki, and Tokyo 7 released only a handful of anime with female protagonists and themes, most of which turned out to be failures. Subsequently, they refrained from producing anime centered around females, as they perceived their primary audience to be male and overlooked the potential of female viewers. In Chairman Shin's office, as he observed the charts highlighting the disregard for female audiences by entertainment companies, a wide grin spread across his face. "You're grinning widely. You must be devising a plan for this situation, right?" Myra's voice sounded beside Shin as she examined the charts detailing the anime fan base's gender and age demographics. She was the one who presented this information to Shin. "I think it's about time I produce that anime." Shin grinned widely. Myra looked at Shin thoughtfully, intrigued and curious about what he had in mind. Little did she know, Shin was contemplating reviving one of the successful anime for females from his past life. In that life, it was so renowned that whenever he wanted to watch something, his sister would interrupt him and switch to the channel airing this particular anime. Initially hesitant because it was considered a girls' anime, Shin found himself watching it due to the cute appearances of the characters. It was none other than the widely popular Sailor Moon. During that period when Shin had yet to discover adult H-anime and H-visual novels games, the characters from Sailor Moon held a special place as his first waifus. Chapter 285, Kishin World Championship. In the United States, the eagerly awaited Kishin World Championships were on the horizon. The contenders included professional gamers from Japan and their American counterparts. While the primary competitors hailed from Japan and the USA, a notable third faction emerged from Canada, and a handful of participants from various other countries joined the fray. Given that the event took place in the USA, American gamers comprised the majority of participants. Many gamers across the nation were buzzing with excitement, with some even making personal plans to attend the inaugural venue of the tournament. Additionally, the competition would be broadcast on television. The tournament primarily featured SKES games and the new KS1 games. Aside from the KS1 titles from Kishin, the lineup included games from renowned companies like Kuma Games, Alias, Shin Roads, and others. Most KS1 games were not real-time competitions but rather high-score tournaments. A significant number of gamers were fixated on achieving top scores in their respective games. For instance, there was a Super Mario enthusiast who invested countless hours striving for high scores. Some gamers focused on completing games as quickly as possible, even in the absence of an in-game timer. Gamers meticulously tracked their completion times, showcasing a peculiar dedication to speedrunning. The origins of these quirks, especially in speedrunning, remained unclear. However, in the realm of high-score competitions, it was Kishin that first introduced the concept, originating in Japan. Following the high-score competitions, the stage shifted to real-time contests, with Tetris emerging as the most popular game in this category. The Tetris Blast game competition stood out as the most popular among a diverse range of gamers, captivating both kids and adults. Thanks to Tetris Blast's lack of age restrictions, it appealed to players of all ages, including children. Other notable competitions featured the Need for Speed and Kishin All-Stars racing game. The exhilarating racing matches were a hit with gamers, whether young or old, who had a penchant for cars and racing competitions. Following closely were Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, beloved by gamers who appreciated the mechanics and gameplay of these fighting games. While Mortal Kombat might be unsuitable for 5-year-olds, Street Fighter provided a suitable alternative. Gaining attention beyond console video games was the computer video game Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. Its strategic and real-time gameplay promised to attract a mature audience. Although the Kishin World Championships had not yet commenced, the advertisements and the announced tournament games captured the interest of numerous gamers. Video game magazines, radios, and even TV talk shows with ties to Kishin began featuring the upcoming event. One such show, Computer Chronicles, sponsored by Kishin Software and Kishin Trademark, planned to discuss the tournament. Several TV shows sponsored by Kishin were also set to feature the Kishin World Championships. Meanwhile, in South Korea, negotiations between Kishin and Samstar continued, persisting even after several weeks had passed. As the negotiations extended into a month, Lee Han began showing signs that Chairman Han Woon-suk of Samstar might be inclined to agree. While the contracts and terms seemed to favor Kishin, the technologies currently in Kishin's possession and those presented during negotiations were exceptionally advanced for their electronic products. Obtaining a licensing agreement from Kishin and paying favorable royalty fees could propel their electronic products ahead of the competition. Even if other companies pursued licensing from Kishin, the offered royalty fees wouldn't be as advantageous as what Samstar was prepared to pay. Moreover, a joint research venture between Kishin and Samstar, pooling their research capabilities to explore Kishin RealSoft technologies, presented additional benefits. Through this collaboration, Samstar could gain valuable insights from the research and potentially even patent technologies to which they significantly contributed during the joint research with Kishin. While Samstar was eager for the deal, they sought even a slightly more favorable contract, terms, and conditions. However, Kishin, represented by Lee Han and his team, remained unyielding, prolonging the negotiations until a compromise could be reached on the specific terms both parties sought to amend or entirely replace. In Tokyo, Minato, at the Kishin Rules headquarters. In Chairman Shin's office, Shin reviewed the report detailing the ongoing negotiations between Kishin and Samstar in South Korea. Earlier in the day, Shin had concluded his business with Kishin's subsidiary Animation Studios. Over the past few weeks, Shin has been in contact with the higher UPS of Kishin's subsidiary Animation Studios to discuss the creation of the Sailor Moon anime from his previous life. Engaging in discussions about character design, storyline, and scripts for the female characters of Sailor Moon from Shin's previous life proved to be as time-consuming as ever. Having concluded those discussions, Shin now turned his attention to reviewing the ongoing negotiations between Kishin and Samstar in South Korea, wearing a serious and thoughtful expression. Over the past few weeks, Shin has been in contact with the higher UPS of Kishin's subsidiary Animation Studios to discuss the creation of the Sailor Moon anime from his previous life. Engaging in discussions about character design, storyline, and scripts for the female characters of Sailor Moon from Shin's previous life proved to be as time-consuming as ever. Having concluded those discussions, Shin now turned his attention to reviewing the ongoing negotiations between Kishin and Samstar in South Korea, wearing a serious and thoughtful expression. Shin really wanted the Samstar to agree. Besides the LCD technology, their semiconductor and computer component technologies will prove to be useful in the future. In fact, even now, Shin needs Samstar's assistance in researching specific components required for the Game Boy Advance. To be honest, if it were just a regular Game Boy Advance from his previous life, Shin could have handled the research. However, the Game Boy Advance they are currently investigating is the design and hardware capabilities of the Game Boy Advance SP. Yes, the Game Boy Advance that Kishin is currently focused on is the SP version, the slim, flip-screen handheld. This makes the research progress quite time-consuming. Even upon completing the handheld product, the Game Boy Advance, there's no guarantee it could match the hardware capabilities of the Game Boy Advance SP from Shin's past life. At least, it should be an improvement over the original Game Boy Advance from Shin's previous life. To bring the Game Boy Advance closer to the SP version of Shin's previous life, assistance from Samstar's research capabilities is crucial. Relying solely on Kishin's research might result in a better version of the Game Boy Advance from Shin's past, with the SP version's design, but that's not what Shin is truly aiming for. Chapter 286, New Genre and Office Monopoly Championship. Kishin's Game Boy Advance boasted a remarkably advanced LCD for its time, offering vibrant colors and innovative brightness technology. This feature ensured gamers could enjoy their favorite titles even in bright sunlight without being hindered by glare on the screen. Beyond the impressive display, the hardware capabilities of the Game Boy Advance marked a significant leap for Kishin's handheld consoles. This was a notable progression from their earlier releases, which only included the Game Boy and Game Boy Mini. Shin, the mind behind Kishin, expressed confidence in the success of the Game Boy Advance. He foresaw triumph, attributing it to the expanding library of Game Boy video games. Even if, hypothetically, Kishin's Game Boy Advance experienced commercial failure despite its design and hardware similarities to Shin's previous success with the Game Boy Advance SP, Shin viewed the research investment as worthwhile. The technological insights gained from exploring the Game Boy Advance with SP capabilities and design would prove valuable in the long run. Why? Well, the slim design coupled with colored, adjustable brightness LCD technologies and a flip feature paved the way for Kishin's advancements in mobile phone technology. These LCD innovations, combined with comparable hardware capabilities, promised to catapult the mobile phone industry forward, potentially revolutionizing it. This leap could have expedited the transition to the smartphone era much faster than in Shin's previous life. The impact of these technologies extended beyond video games, promising to bring innovation to various industries. Meanwhile, Kishin's new subsidiary, Electronic Arts, was actively developing a video game centered around simulation games, the Sims genre. Unlike other game genres, this category had not been deeply explored. Kishin provided the concept for this game genre along with video game development toolkits and a library of game genres. Electronic Arts had the unique opportunity to delve into the uncharted territory of Sims genres, allowing for exploration and innovation in a relatively untapped gaming landscape. Exclusively provided by Kishin to Electronic Arts, this support not only fueled the growth of Electronic Arts through investments in game developers, upgraded computer equipment, and an expanded game development team, but also involved acquiring a significant number of computers for video game development. This strategic move positioned Electronic Arts to bring to life the video games envisioned by Kishin. The development of Sims games proved intricate. While the VG engine offered assistance, completion seemed distant. Consequently, Electronic Arts focused on producing video games with shorter production times, aiming for profitability within months or a year, reflecting the founders' eagerness to prove their worth to Kishin and address current financial challenges. As Electronic Arts faced losses due to video game production, their concentration shifted to games that could be both profitable and quickly produced. Meanwhile, the Monopoly board game from Kishin Merchandise emerged as a hit in the USA market, becoming a favored pastime among employees during their free moments. Within the workspace, a Monopoly board game adorned a particular table, its board meticulously set, colorful money stacks, and dice ready for play. The employees gathered around to watch as 4 individuals engaged in a Monopoly board game. Their current choice of entertainment stemmed from their superior recently removing games from the office PCs. Higher UPS deemed games a negative influence on the employees, but the creative staff found a way to introduce amusement to the workspace. Who do you think will win? I'll bet on Sarah. Sarah? I'll side with Thomas. He's a risk taker. Risk taker? Nah, Sarah is a strategic investor. She was even praised by the higher UPS for her investing skills in business discussions. The employees bantered as they observed the impending Monopoly game. Presently, it was the office Monopoly Championship, and the onlookers were the defeated contestants watching the championship unfold. I'm supporting Maria. She's a skilled negotiator, and I think she has a high chance of winning. I'm on David's side. He's a traditionalist, just like me. You and David are just a couple of stubborn individuals. You're the stubborn one. Observing the gameplay unfold on the board, employees engaged in friendly banter, placing bets on which player would emerge victorious. Soon, the four individuals began their Monopoly game, taking turns to roll the dice. Sarah, eyes fixed on the board, declared, I'm aiming for orange properties. They're excellent for long-term investment. Thomas, rolling the dice with flair, exclaimed, double sixes. Straight to boardwalk. I'm buying hotels right away. Upon hearing this, Mariah, smiling slyly, chimed in, hold on, Tommy. Let's discuss a trade. I have Baltic Avenue and Mediterranean. What do you say we make a deal? Don't be so casual, Mariah. Call me Mr. Thomas while playing as a respectable monopolist, he replied, adjusting his formal clothing. So pretentious as ever, Mariah sighed. Pausing, she continued, all right, Mr. Thomas, in exchange for your coveted boardwalk, I propose a trade of both Baltic Avenue and Mediterranean Avenue. This would grant me the lucrative orange monopoly, setting me on a path to financial dominance. Thomas, rubbing his chin, pondered, the orange monopoly is undeniably tempting. The steady income it generates could prove invaluable. However, parting ways with Boardwalk, a property with immense potential, requires further consideration. Mariah smiled and said, I understand your hesitation. To sweeten the deal, I propose a non-aggression pact. We refrain from targeting each other's properties for a specific number of rounds, allowing us both to develop our empires without interference. Nodding thoughtfully, Thomas replied, a non-aggression pact, you say? Now that's an intriguing proposition. The orange monopoly combined with a period of safe expansion. I must admit, Ms. Mariah, you have my attention. Excellent. Shall we seal this deal with a handshake? Let's watch our empires flourish while leaving the others in the dust. Mariah smiled, extending her hand. Deal. Now, let's get down to business and build those hotels. Thomas grinned, firmly grasping Mariah's hand. Observing this, Sarah and David grew more serious. David chuckled, I'm sticking to my strategy of buying railroads. They're the true powerhouse of the game. Meanwhile, employees watching engaged in discussions. Oh, look. The two players have reached an agreement. Well, this seems disadvantageous for the other two players. They're really into it. Of course, this game involves strategies, one needs to be serious. The Monopoly board game continued. In round 2, the four players shifted the game landscape. Sarah exclaimed, yes. I landed on Park Place. Now, my real estate empire is starting to take shape. Thomas grumbled, this is outrageous. I keep landing on chance and community chest. It's like the game is against me. Maria smiled cunningly and said, don't fret, Thomas. Remember, deals are always on the table. Perhaps we can find a way to work together again. David calmly collected rent from his railroad holdings, stating, just another day at the office for me. Steady income, no surprises. As the game unfolded, the four players remained highly focused. Round 3. Sarah offered Tom a trade, I'll give you Park Place for Baltic Avenue and Mediterranean. It'll help you complete your monopoly. Thomas, eyes narrowed, responded, that's tempting. But what's in it for you? Maria leaned in, Sarah, if you help me acquire St. James Place, we can share the wealth from the orange monopoly. Think about it. David shook his head, I don't trust these deals. I'm sticking to my plan and building my railroad network. Rounds 4 and 5. The game unfolded with alliances forming and shattering, strategies adjusting, and tension rising with each roll of the dice. Sarah's real estate portfolio thrived, Maria cleverly manipulated trades, Thomas took bold risks, and David remained steadfast in his railroad strategy. Final round. It all comes down to a nail-biting finish. Sarah needs to land on Boardwalk to secure the win. Thomas requires one more property to complete his orange monopoly. Maria is counting on rent from her strategically placed hotels. David is hoping his railroads will carry him to victory. The dice roll, A and D. Sarah lands on boardwalk. Cheers erupt as she collects the rent, securing her place as the Monopoly champion. Sarah, smiling triumphantly, declares, "I told you I was the strategic investor." Thomas laughs, "You played a good game, Sarah. I'll have to try harder next time." Maria grins, "Maybe we can team up and take down Sarah next time." David nods, "I'm always open to a good alliance. But remember, the railroads are still the backbone of any successful monopoly strategy." Meanwhile, employees chatter among themselves, saying, "Looks like the losers will take on some of Sarah's tasks at work." They look at Sarah, the new monopoly champion in the office, feeling a sense of admiration. The 4 players were skilled in the monopoly game and rightfully deserved the top 4 positions in the office. As employees seek advice from Sarah, a knock on the workspace door interrupts. In a hurry, they hide the monopoly board game and return to work. Meanwhile, Shin, immersed in the Sailor Moon anime project, remains unaware of the influence the game Monopoly has brought to some parts of the United States. I hope you don't mind the other people's reaction towards the MC's board game product. Chapter 287, Kishin Technological Prowess. The Kishin and Samstar negotiations persisted for several more weeks until Samstar ultimately accepted Kishin's terms and conditions. Han Woon-suk found it challenging to sway Kishin, a tough nut to crack, leaving him no choice but to agree. Simultaneously, Kishin and Samstar are set to initiate joint research on semiconductor technology and mobile phone technologies. Additionally, they will collaborate on IoT and sensor technologies crucial for the future of electronic products. Samstar holds high hopes for IoT sensor and communication protocol technologies, vital for their electronic products' future, while Kishin aims to gain insights into these electronics technologies. Shin was elated that Samstar finally agreed, anticipating that the partnership would facilitate semiconductor research crucial for game consoles. The research progress on LCD technologies for the Game Boy Advance would also see improvement. Good news! With this joint research, GBA and K64 projects will have a more solid research foundation, Shin said with relief. Indeed, besides GBA, K64 is another game console they are actively researching. The K64 differs from the Kishin PlayStation models, it falls between the KS1 and the future KS2 of Kishin. Similar to Nintendo 64 from Shin's previous life, the K64 stands out by using a CD-ROM instead of cartridges. This distinction makes the K64 superior to the N64, as it can handle more data and boasts greater memory for CD games, unlike the N64 limited by cartridge constraints. With the K64, games will closely approach 3D, though it will take more years to fully realize this potential. Currently, Kishin is focused on building a video game library for the KS1, with dozens of games available within a year of its release. The quality of these 2D rendered games creating a 3D illusion showcases how much the industry has progressed under Kishin's leadership. Moving into the realm of 3D technologies, NVIDIA, recognizing their potential, is developing Direct 3D. Given Kishin's major shareholding and influence, they play a significant role in guiding NVIDIA's advancements in 3D technologies. This is a graphics application programming interface designed by Microsoft for use on the Windows operating system, enabling developers to create high-performance 3D graphics and multimedia applications. Direct 3D facilitates hardware acceleration and advanced graphics features, including 3D rendering objects. Developed collaboratively by Kishin and NVIDIA, this application is steadily nearing completion. With Direct 3D, Kishin, or Shin's aspiration for the 3D technology path, is gradually coming to fruition. Furthermore, the NVIDIA GPU designed for computers is set to be finalized next year, featuring a 128-bit architecture. While this GPU appears sufficient for KS2 development, it's worth noting that NVIDIA's GPU is a general-purpose one with a distinct architecture, not specifically tailored to meet the needs of a console. Although NVIDIA is assisting Kishin in developing a GPU tailored specifically for console needs, like the KS1's GPU developed through their joint research, a 128-bit GPU for the KS2 requires further exploration before completion. Despite the support from NVIDIA, Kishin faces challenges in console GPU development. NVIDIA, being focused on the PC market, means Kishin must invest significant effort independently. Beyond GPU technologies, Kishin's collaboration with NVIDIA is limited, and further research extends only to GPUs. This is where the crucial role of joint research with Sanstar in semiconductors becomes evident. The collaboration extends beyond GPU development to include CPU, sound chips, and various semiconductor technologies. Moreover, Samstar's DRAM, ahead of most companies globally, proves beneficial for Kishin's consoles. Through joint research, Kishin gains technologies, and with Kishin research amalgamating insights from collaborations with other companies, Kishin can enhance its own technological prowess. Meanwhile, in the USA, the Kishin World Championships have finally commenced. The Oakland Coliseum buzzed with activity. Before the main event, the stage was set for the Tetris Blast Showdown, with rows of competitors, each equipped with customized consoles, displaying focused expressions. Excitement filled the air as video game fans observed the spectacle. As the first tetriminos fell, the competition ignited. The commentator exclaimed, "And Anya from Moscow is on fire. Those double T-spins are stacking up like skyscrapers." Anya, a woman from Moscow, stood before the Kishin console, playing Tetris with unwavering concentration. Her hands moved like lightning, pressing the controller buttons rapidly. When the camera captured her swift movements, those watching on the LED screen were left in awe. Viewers at home were equally impressed. As Anya prepared for a combo, the scene shifted to a young man with dyed blonde hair. The commentator exclaimed, "But wait, here comes Kai, the streetwise wonder kid, with a Tetris cascade that's pure pixelated poetry." Kai, also a professional player, showcased impressive skills, captivating both the on-site audience and viewers at home as combos flew in the Tetris game. The scene transitioned to another handsome young man, a competitor in the Tetris Blast Showdown, prompting the commentator to exclaim, "The tension is thicker than a 6-block line. Can anyone stop the unstoppable Akira, the Tetris samurai? Whoa! Ah! The young man is already ahead of the other competitors. I think he'll win." The on-site audience couldn't help but exclaim and engage in discussions, while viewers at home watched, enjoying popcorn and sipping on Coke. Chapter 288, Tetris Blast Showdown and Animes. The Kishin World Championship kicked off with the Tetris Blast Showdown competition. Notable participants included Anya from Moscow, Kai from the USA, and Akira from Japan. Among the 8 contestants in the Tetris Blast Showdown, the spotlight shone on the top players Anya, Kai, and Akira. As the competition unfolded, the remaining 5 participants struggled against the prowess of these skilled gamers. Akira, hailing from Japan, demonstrated intense focus, strategically stacking tetriminos and executing impressive combos to gain an edge over the competition. While the commentator exclaimed, "Anya's constructing a tetrimino skyscraper. Can she maintain control?" Akira remained unfazed, determined not to let the awe-inducing commentary distract him from his gameplay. After a while, the commentator exclaimed once again, "Kai's immersed in a game of his own, with blocks defying gravity as they disappear and reappear." Anya, Kai, and Akira played with an intensity that seemed life or death, leaving the other 5 players trailing in their wake. "Oh? What's Sir Bob up to? Did he truly come here to compete?" The commentator questioned as the focus shifted to a nonchalant man playing Tetris Blast. "Stupid commentator!" Bob muttered, unfazed, realizing he was up against 3 formidable opponents. "Akira's on a rampage. Lines vanish faster than a ninja in the night," the commentator exclaimed, capturing the Tetris Blast competition's escalating intensity. The scene shifted to Akira rapidly executing combos on the Tetris game screen. Anya and Kai, reacting to the commentator's remarks, swiftly followed suit. With every cleared line, combo, or near miss, the stands erupted in gasps and thunderous roars. The Oakland Coliseum pulsed with the rhythmic heartbeat of the game, uniting the audience in a shared passion for Tetris. "Fortunately, I joined you all here to witness the competition in person. It's genuinely exciting to observe the competitors up close," a young man in the audience remarked to his friends. "Absolutely. I told you it would be more enjoyable to experience the tournament firsthand." "Absolutely. It's like watching wrestling, but with video games, hee. The young man nodded in agreement. Along with the audience, he could feel the hype and excitement, and personally watching the competitors' expressions on the LED screen made it even more worthwhile. In Shinro Suzuki's household. Shin, watching the Kishin World Championship on a cable channel with Myra, remarked, "Even just the casual Tetris Blast Showdown is already exciting. I wonder how thrilling the main events will be." Myra nodded, then turned to Shin. I've noticed you've been quite busy lately, and I hear you're heading to the Kishin subsidiary's animation studios. I wonder what you're planning? She asked, clinging to Shin. Shin smiled, replying, you know, I've been occupied with an anime project that will gain popularity among female audiences. It revolves around female protagonists. An anime project for females. Myra appeared quite surprised. She continued, wait, didn't I bring you the report about the anime fan base? Most of the base is male, and female-oriented anime lacks sufficient support. Yet, you're creating an anime for females. Myra found it truly astonishing, considering the existing lack of support for animes targeted at females. It was evident that animes aimed at a female audience had been unprofitable, leaving Myra perplexed about Shin's decision to produce one. Shin just smiled, drawing closer to Myra, and said, hee, don't worry. This anime project I have in mind will be profitable enough. Myra, with furrowed brows, questioned, profitable? She paused and continued, why do you personally need to lead an anime project? Considering our company already holds IPs of the most famous and successful anime franchises produced in the early days of our business, why embark on another anime project yourself? After a moment, she added, with the growth of our Kishin companies, aren't there other businesses that require our attention? Shin, in response, shook his head and said, you're right. We have a portfolio of successful anime franchises, and with One Piece animation already underway, we've established a solid foundation in the anime industry. However, he paused, locking eyes with Myra, and continued, while I should be focusing on other business aspects, this anime project our studios will produce is special to me. I want the world to experience the unique feeling of watching the anime I have in mind. When Myra heard that, she couldn't help but smile, saying, oh. Is it akin to anime like Pokemon, Dragon Ball, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Earthbound? Trust me, it's different. I'm sure you'll like it, Shin replied with a smile. Oh, I can't wait, Myra said, smiling as she snuggled her face against Shin. In a certain high school, a group of friends discussed. I can't wait for the One Piece anime. It was just announced that it will soon air on TV Asahi. Yeah, I've been eagerly anticipating this. Besides Dragon Ball, Naruto, and the new manga called Slum Dunk, One Piece is one of my favorites. It's being made by Kishin, so I'm not worried about the animation being bad, haha. That's true. At this moment, most anime fans were closely following the upcoming release of the One Piece anime. One Piece was gaining more fans not only in Japan but also in the United States and other parts of the world. This was due to Kishin Bookstore being the distributor for mangas like Dragon Ball, Naruto, and One Piece outside Japan. With Amazon gaining attention, these mangas became bestsellers on the site, and besides Dragon Ball, One Piece manga was one of the top sellers. With its comical art style, captivating story, and a mix of comedic elements, it provided entertaining content for people around the world. Chapter 289, Quake. The Computer Chronicles featured the Kishin World Championship and even got to interview each representative of Kishin and Tora Suzuki. The American representative of Kishin talked about how good and innovative their video games are, while the Tora Suzuki American representative talked about their new and latest game on the PC. As that was occurring, the game tournament taking place in the Kishin World Championship, racing games such as the Need for Speed and Kishin All-Stars Racing were also getting hyped. And then the Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter Championship was also getting hyped from the gamers competing. And so, the Kishin World Championship continues with the different kinds of game tournament competitions taking place. Doom 2, they were the current most popular FPS video games for PC, and some gamers felt that they were the most awesome video games in the world. Even in the Kishin forum, there will be discussions like, it's my first, I think there are no games to surpass Doom series in terms of the FPS genre. Good morning, I agree, even other companies can't copy its graphics and so on. 11 bitches good morning, well, Kishin made it. And yet, I agree, no FPS video games could really compare to the Doom series. After all, the Doom series has already pushed the 3D boundaries and level designs. Such discussions were unanimously agreed to by each other. The other FPS games that were able to match Doom 2 graphics were because of the Kishin Software VG engine. And at the same time, Kishin gradually finished the development of a video game that will surpass Doom 2, and it was called Quake. This video game Quake was developed through the Unreal Engine. Quake is a video game that will really introduce gamers to true 3D movement and physics, along with more advanced lighting and texture effects. This is considered a significant leap forward in graphical fidelity. PC gamers were not yet aware of the video game Quake that the Kishin will introduce. While Quake was still not yet released, Shin gave the beta of the game to Steve Jobs and Will Gates. In Will Gates' office, inserting the CD of Quake into his PC, and after finishing the installation, he opened the game. To be quite honest, Will Gates was somewhat expectant of the video game. It was developed by the #1 video game company in the world, after all. Simultaneously, Shin had just informed him that the Quake video game surpassed the Doom series in graphics. So, Will Gates was quite curious. Having already played Doom and experienced its graphics, he knew that the Doom series graphics were currently quite advanced. Let's see if the graphics really surpassed the Doom series. Will Gates muttered as he started the game. Will Gates is deeply passionate about technology, and now, having the chance to play the new video game from Kishin, he's a bit excited. The video game may feature advanced 3D technology. Although Kishin and Microsoft are developing the Unreal Engine together, and the software can already produce true 3D movement and physics for video games, Will Gates is still quite interested in the new video game developed solely by Kishin. And besides, Microsoft was still in the progress of production for developing a video game with 3D movements and physics, so Will Gates wanted to see the results of the video game featuring these aspects. To run a video game with true 3D movements, physics, texture effects, and sound effects like Quake and smooth gameplay, one still needed an application or an API, such as OpenGL, the commonly used API for PCs. However, Kishin, aiming for a smooth gameplay for Quake, also provided an alternative along with the CD of the Quake game, and it was called Direct 3D. After the game started, Will Gates saw that the game begins in a dimly lit, obsidian-walled tunnel, deep beneath the surface. Will Gates was a bit astonished as the texture effects were really superior to the Doom series. Not to mention, as he controlled his in-game character, he could feel that it truly had 3D movements and physics, which were superior to Doom's 2.5D. The sound effects with echoing tremors sounded, and Will Gates couldn't help but smile wryly. I should have expected this kind of thing. It's made by Kishin after all. After that, he controlled his in-game character and saw a broken bridge, and beneath was flowing lava. Then, text appeared on the screen. This hall selects hard skill. Will Gates controlled his in-game character to jump across the bridge, and as he did so, his in-game character's voice sounded, humph, as he jumped. After getting across, Will Gates still saw the text, and the wall that was actually the door opened. Will Gates entered the area. A new text appeared. This is the first episode, Dimension of the Doomed. The mystical past comes alive. As soon as Will Gates saw this, he knew the game had finally begun, and he continued to play. As he played the gameplay of Quake was much smoother compared to the Doom series. Unlike Doom series, which has a more straightforward corridor shooter with brutal close-quarters combat, focusing on raw power and aggression against demonic hordes, Quake's gameplay was faster-paced and more strategic. It placed a heavy emphasis on movement, strafe jumping, and resource management, featuring a wider range of weapons and encouraging exploration. The Doom series world and atmosphere are claustrophobic and oppressive, filled with industrial hell landscapes and grotesque monsters. The soundtrack, characterized by heavy metal and industrial tones, adds to the gritty atmosphere. On the other hand, the Quake world and atmosphere are dark fantasy with gothic influences, featuring medieval-inspired architecture and Lovecraftian horrors. The soundtrack is ambient and unsettling, building tension and suspense. In Will Gates' opinion, both the Doom series and the new video game from Kishin called Quake have their own charm, but he can confidently say that the Quake game he is currently playing is much better than the Doom series. As he plays it, he just knows for sure that the video game will become a hit as soon as it is released. Sigh. I wish I owned Kishin, and if I did, I would truly lead the computer industry. Will Gates couldn't help but mutter. To be honest, he was quite uncomfortable with a company like Kishin having a software, Unreal Engine, with the capabilities for animation, 3D animation, and special effects. For game development, it was truly enviable. Unfortunately, Kishin owned the software, and the source code of the software was also licensed by Kishin. Microsoft didn't have a choice but to partner with Kishin to use such advanced software for 3D rendering, 3D development, animations, and so on. After that, Will Gates also installed the Quake game on another PC and this time used the API OpenGL. He wanted to see the difference between OpenGL and Kishin Direct 3D, and after a while, he was a bit shocked by the result, such as the performance being much better when the API used was Direct 3D. Will Gates couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed again. Damn Kishin! Was this Direct 3D still in development when it was already better than the OpenGL platform? Chapter 290, Direct 3D and competes in horror genre. Direct 3D, it was the NVIDIA API, and it was designed to support games, especially 3D games. And Direct 3D was much better than the OpenGL platform, and Kishin really wanted to assist NVIDIA in making Direct 3D the major platform to support games. Why? Well, if Direct 3D became the primary 3D graphics API for PC, especially Windows, the operating system of Microsoft, Kishin's partner, and by having Direct 3D supporting it, NVIDIA can become the de facto standard for PC gaming, like in Shin's previous life. Direct 3D will really help NVIDIA gain a significant market share and establish themselves as a major player in the graphics card industry. And Direct 3D will open doors to new markets. Direct 3D's popularity extended beyond PC gaming, finding applications in other areas like simulation, visualization, and design. This enabled NVIDIA to expand its reach and tap into new markets beyond just games. And through Kishin's existing partnership with Microsoft, Kishin will propose to work with Microsoft to optimize Direct 3D for NVIDIA GPUs, leading to smoother and faster gaming experiences. And with these NVIDIA-driven innovations, with the API, NVIDIA may surpass other graphics card companies such as ATI, later AMD, etc. Direct 3D provided a common platform for showcasing these advancements, leading to faster, more powerful GPUs for everyone. In short, with Direct 3D, NVIDIA may elevate its position in the graphics card market, and Direct 3D is also one of the reasons why NVIDIA became the key player in the PC gaming industry in Shin's previous life. As Direct 3D also fueled innovations and performance improvements for NVIDIA GPU's development, and Direct 3D will also contribute to NVIDIA's financial success and brand recognition. Shin already informed Will Gates, for the development of Direct 3D. As Microsoft currently dominates the computer industry with their operating system and software regarding office work or something. And after a few days, Microsoft agrees to collaborate with Kishin regarding Direct 3D support for Windows. Since Direct 3D will significantly enhance the Windows operating system's gaming performance, it would be foolish for Microsoft to disagree. With the Direct 3D platform, improvements in PC game performance will make a noticeable difference. Moreover, Kishin and Microsoft are already partnered in the development of Unreal Engine. Through Unreal Engine, Microsoft has produced high-quality games that have made a mark in the PC gaming market. Upon completing the production of video games through Kishin's collaboration, Kishin and Microsoft are currently working on a video game that is nearing completion. The video game is titled Civilization. The game instantly became Will Gates' favorite. Designed by Shinro Suzuki and other Microsoft designers, the game revolves around kingdom building. Given Will Gates' childhood dream of becoming a king or ruler, the game Civilization is truly entertaining for him. Having played its beta, Will Gates spends his free time enjoying Civilization, feeling that the game has enhanced his management skills. The gameplay involves turn-based strategy, resource management, a technology tree, and elements of diplomacy and war. Although Civilization was supposed to be released, Will Gates, who became its beta tester, delayed its release as he suggested to Kishin and the Microsoft team to enhance the game further. The game is finally about to be released after Will Gates was satisfied with the results. In California, USA, in a certain household, Jomar was currently browsing the internet. Yahoo had gained attention among his friends, as they could email each other through Yahoo Mail and the like. Jomar became an internet user when his school initiated a program to spread awareness of internet technology. Supported by the WorldCom and Kishin Foundation programs, Kishin Foundation even provided computers to their school equipped with internet from WorldCom. Because of this, Jomar also got accustomed to the internet while using computers in the school library equipped with internet. As a result, his friends or classmates also had the opportunity to have a Yahoo account and register on the Kishin website. It was because of Kishin that there were computers equipped with internet in their school, so Kishin would also promote their website. Not to mention, Jomar and his friends loved video games, so they didn't hesitate to register on the Kishin website to stay informed about the latest updates regarding Kishin video games. On the forum, there is a small banner with the text, "New PC game." Let's welcome another Kishin FPS video game that is much superior to the Doom series, Quake. With just the text and a low-quality image of the video game title Quake, Jomar was already quite curious about the game. Considering it's a PC game, and he has the latest computer equipped with the latest Windows operating system, he really wanted to see what the video game is like. Not to mention, the KP software that offers video games away for online multiplayer. People felt that PC gaming was much more superior than console gaming with its online capabilities. Unlike consoles, which were not yet equipped with online gaming, it was more like solo gaming, except for 2 players with another controller connected to the same console. There was really no way for multiplayer options online like PC gaming. Console gamers argued that console gaming was superior because of the quality games released on consoles, such as Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot, and sequels of Super Mario Bros., Sonic the Hedgehog, and so on. With the latest video games made by other video game companies, console gaming was also entertaining enough. Looks like I'll have to use my remaining allowance. Jomar sighed. As a high school student, he only gets a modest monthly allowance, and now, it seems that he has to save money to buy the video game called Quake. Meanwhile, in the Tora Suzuki conference, we can see in the report that we are playing catch-up with the KS1 estimated sales. We were only able to dominate the market with our TSX Fusion for a few weeks before being left behind once more in Japan, Taro Ikeda said with a solemn expression. Well, it's because we have fewer attractive games to offer for our TSX Fusion while Kishin is taking advantage of their famous and established IPs such as Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Donkey Kong to attract customers for their KS1, Idari Tanaka said. The only way to surpass Kishin in sales is to release better video games than what we are releasing now, Nico Tabata said. A better video game, hey. A Tora executive nodded as he stroked his chin. At least in a particular genre, we could slowly surpass Kishin's video games in that specific genre, Seiki said with a smile. Yeah, and that's when our horror genre video game comes in, which is about to be completed. Idari Tanaka said with a smile. That video game is a horror genre aiming to surpass Kishin's Resident Evil, right? Shiko said with a smile. Yeah, and it's called Religion of Nightmares. I have high hopes for it, Idari Tanaka nodded as he spoke. Chapter 291, Video Games Featured in Magazines. In Tokyo, Japan, around November, new lists of upcoming video games were listed in the video game magazine's publishers. Gamers were excited for the latest video games about to be released, featured in magazines. The video games by Kishin, Tora, Suzuki, Kuma Games, Shinroads, and surprisingly, an emerging Japanese video game company named Konami. Konami video games became really popular with console gamers, especially with their side-scrolling games for SKES and Araki. After a while, they also started to develop games for KS1 and TSX Fusion. Their latest release was called Uprising, and its storyline was about a group of soldiers rebelling against a powerful organization that controlled most of the human minds. The rebellion started when a soldier named Number 714, or Gilbert Jr., accidentally awakened, and the control device in his head malfunctioned. As a result, Number 714 gained control of his mind and realized his name was Gilbert Jr. Until then, Gilbert Jr.'s mission was to pretend to be in control, slowly finding a way to awaken his friends still under the organization's control. With that, Gilbert Jr. and his friends fought against the organization called the QS Organization. That is the story manual, and many gamers who read the story manual in a magazine were already curious and felt like playing it. Another video game from Shinroads, titled Riders Guild, was a racing game with all kinds of designed motorcycles. And another video game from Kuma Games, called Labyrinth of Souls. It was an RPG game with 2D rendered pixel graphics, featuring a third-person perspective similar to Resident Evil. Tora and Suzuki then collaborated on 2 video games. The first was Gloomy, Land of Happiness, and the second one was Religion of Nightmares. The first Tora Suzuki game was a sequel to Tora's famous IP Happy. Its story revolved around the fact that Happy had finally created a land of happiness. However, due to Gloomy's absence, there was no sadness anymore, and the living creatures of the land were still happy despite hurting each other. As a result, Gloomy became the protagonist of the game, and his mission was to fight against Happy and defeat him. This video game served as one of Tora Suzuki's trump cards against Kishin. When gamers read about this new Happy sequel, they felt refreshed, as Tora Suzuki introduced a game where players would take on the role of an antagonist. Although Gloomy became the protagonist to defeat Happy, the supposed main character, Gloomy still served as the antagonist. Even though Happy successfully created the land of happiness, he himself was concerned about people lacking empathy. Despite these complexities, gamers remained intrigued about playing as an antagonist in the game. Finally, the second Toru Suzuki game, Religion of Nightmares, was a horror game. The protagonist, named Ward, a journalist, would explore the mystery behind a cult for his news project. However, he was discovered during his investigations and taken by the cultists. Locked in a basement, Ward had to find a way to escape, exploring the surroundings for hints and obtaining information about the cult along the way. From the video games about to be released by Toru Suzuki alone, it's evident that Toru and Suzuki were making significant strides in their game production. Gamers, especially Toru and Suzuki fans, were eagerly anticipating their upcoming video games. Meanwhile, Kishin was set to release several video games according to magazine information. When gamers saw this, they were somewhat surprised by the mass release of Kishin video games. Simultaneously, the lack of astonishment prevailed, given that Kishin was the current leader in the video game industry, and such a feat was expected. PC game releases included Quake, Civilization, Warcraft, Tides of Darkness, and for KS1 games, Metal Gear Solid I, Silent Hill, GTA 3, and the 2 sequels for Final Fantasy V and 6. Each game would be released separately, and console gamers were already getting excited about playing Kishin video games. Given Kishin's established reputation for consistently delivering high-quality video games, gamers didn't doubt the excellence of Kishin's productions. However, one thing that confused them was GTA 3 being labeled as Part 3. Where were the previous versions? It turned out that GTA I and II had been quietly released for SKES and KS1 recently by Kishin. Most gamers, reading magazines, only noticed these releases after reading about GTA 3. While some were aware of GTA I and II, released by Kishin several weeks ago, these games weren't as famous as others due to their simple gameplay with a high-in-the-sky camera. GTA I and II were initial versions, experimental developments by Kishin's game development department. These versions paved the way for the real deal, GTA 3 for KS1. The readers were then informed by the magazine that they could play GTA 3 without playing its previous versions, as each game was inherently different. As readers delved into the GTA 3 storyline and expected gameplay, gamers, especially Kishin followers, were shocked to discover that the game revolved around gangs and crimes. This realization sparked discussions among gamers on the Kishin forum. The video games are set to be released separately, with some Kishin games scheduled for release in a week or so before others. As for GTA 3, it is expected to be released around December, creating a one-month gap before its launch. Chapter 292, Gloomy. On November 14, 1995, the Toru video game Gloomy, Land of Happiness was released. Kevin, who had been living in Tokyo for 3 years, was eager to buy it. Being a devoted fan of video games, Kevin was intrigued by the latest Toru release, Gloomy, Land of Happiness. Despite having played only a few Toru titles and casually enjoying the Happy series, Kevin's interest was piqued by Gloomy, Land of Happiness, where the protagonist was actually the antagonist from the Happy series. The prospect of playing as an antagonist captured the attention of gamers who had read about it in magazines. Have you heard about the latest Toru game, Gloomy? You get to play as an antagonist. Pretty interesting, right? Yeah, I played the Happy series, Gloomy was one of its antagonists, and Gloomy being the protagonist this time got me curious. I wonder how the game will turn out. True. Only by playing it ourselves can we really understand how the game is. As Kevin browsed video games in the store, he overheard discussions among a group of high school young men. I guess I'm not the only one curious, Kevin thought, smiling. After purchasing the Kishin video game Metal Gear Solid I, Kevin returned home with a handful of video games. Upon arriving home, he inserted the CD of Toru's game, Gloomy, Land of Happiness, into his other console, the TSX Fusion. Typically, he didn't use the TSX Fusion as much as the KS1, but this time, he intended to play Gloomy, Land of Happiness extensively, especially if it lived up to the descriptions in the magazines. Soon, the TSX Fusion intro featuring Toru and Suzuki began, followed by the introduction to the video game story. The story kicked off with the usually joyful Happy consistently defeating Gloomy, who was eventually fully defeated and banished to a distant place, far from the L-Emotion people and the L-Emotion land, L-Emotion being the species of Happy and Gloomy, along with other creatures in the L-Emotion lands. Gloomy, bound by a curse restricting his powers, was cast out by Happy and the other L-emotions, sent through portals to random lands in the galaxy. Upon landing in the land of magic, inhabited by magical beings and humans, Gloomy eventually managed to lift the restriction curse placed upon him after residing there for a considerable period. From that point onward, Gloomy sought a way to return to the land of L-emotions. Observing the happenings in L-emotion lands through a magic orb, Gloomy discovered that Happy had become the king and established a land of happiness. Feeling quite gloomy upon seeing this, Gloomy's mission became clear: to defeat the bosses of the magic world, level by level, and return to the lands of L-emotions. After the video game's introduction story, Kevin finally started playing. His in-game character, Gloomy, found itself in the magic world, and Kevin took control to defeat monsters and bosses, each level with its own difficulty, as outlined in the manual. Controlling Gloomy brought a refreshing feeling, with Gloomy's dialogue consistently negative, in contrast to the positive dialogue of Happy. Life is a never-ending storm. Gloomy's voice, tinged with sadness, echoed. Kevin couldn't help but chuckle wryly. Indeed, a true antagonist. Gloomy's voice sounded again as Kevin guided it through the grassy forests. I see shadows even in the brightest moments. Kevin found Gloomy's quotes rather cool. As Kevin guided Gloomy, he encountered monsters, directing Gloomy to attack them with his icy skills. Following that, an enemy boss resembling a wolf, witnessing Gloomy defeat its forces, fled. Kevin maneuvered Gloomy to pursue the mini-boss. Upon catching it, Gloomy faced off against the mini-boss, and after a while, Kevin successfully defeated it, leading to a scene change. The transition resembled a rough 3D animation, similar to the game's introductory story. After vanquishing the boss, Gloomy observed the mini-boss begging for its life. Gloomy noticed a glimmer of hope in the mini-monster boss's eyes. Hope feels like a distant memory. Gloomy's cute Japanese voice sounded, its tone tinged with sadness, delivering quotes that were truly depressing. "Spare me," pleaded the wolf boss as it kneeled. But Gloomy responded mindlessly, "Sunsets are just reminders of inevitable darkness." "What?" The wolf boss looked at Gloomy with confusion, then noticed the sun setting. While the wolf boss remained kneeling, rain started to pour, and Gloomy stared at the sky, saying, "Raindrops are echoes of tears we hide within." Upon hearing this, the wolf boss found Gloomy to be really cool and expressed a desire to become an underling of Gloomy. Gloomy seemed to grasp the wolf boss's willingness, but cared little, and so the wolf boss followed Gloomy without receiving much attention. "Gloomy, you're truly a broken villain." Kevin sighed upon hearing Gloomy's dialogues, acknowledging the antagonist's charisma in gaining loyal followers. Similar to the antagonists in famous Kishin franchises like Super Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog, Gloomy seemed to be the most serious and darkest. Bowser, the antagonist in Super Mario Bros., had gained popularity for his funny looks and dialogue in the latest Super Mario video games for KS1. Likewise, Dr. Robotnik, the antagonist in Sonic the Hedgehog, despite being a funny character, possessed a charismatic villainy. In Kevin's view, Gloomy appeared to be more serious and darker than them all. Given that popular Kishin video games were family-friendly, their antagonists were not as deep and serious as Gloomy was portraying. With that, Kevin continued to play, acknowledging that Tora's video games, in collaboration with Suzuki, had indeed improved significantly, earning the title of a very good video game. After hours of playing the game, Kevin began to feel a bit bored. While the game's concept was refreshing and the gameplay was satisfactory, he found the levels to be both too easy and dragged out as he continued playing. Despite investing 3 hours, he had yet to return to the L-emotion lands. Feeling the need for a break from the game, Kevin switched the TSX Fusion console to the KS1 to try out the latest Kishin video game, titled Metal Gear Solid I. Chapter 293, Metal Gear Solid I. As soon as Kevin connected the KS1 to the television, and the KS1 and Kishin intro played out, the video game introduction story started. It began with the intense soundtrack. In the deep sea, a submarine can be seen. The scene changed to the inside of the submarine, with people operating it and high-tech equipment visible. Ohio-class nuclear submarine discovery. The location of the place was labeled. And then, a middle-aged man's voice sounded. The nuclear weapons disposal facility on Moses Island, in Alaska's Fox Archipelago, was attacked and captured by next-generation special forces, being led by members of Foxhound. The camera zoomed in on the submarine's screen, and the scene turned white before zooming towards the radar screen in the sea. They're demanding that the government turn over the remains of Big Boss, and if their demands aren't met within 24 hours, they'll launch a nuclear weapon. As Kevin watched the scene and listened to the dialogues, he grew curious. Continuing the scene, Solid Snake was assigned a mission to infiltrate Moses Island and Foxhound organization to prevent the nuclear weapon launch. Foxhound's Special Forces unit comprised experts specializing in various tasks: Revolver Ocelot, Sniper Wolf, Vulcan Raven, Psycho Mantis, Decoy Octopus, and the leader, Liquid Snake. After the video game introduction, the scene shifted to the main menu. Kevin selected the options, chose New Game, and initiated the game. The game commenced with an animation, featuring the protagonist swimming in the water to a choir-like soundtrack, creating a layer of mystery and suspense. The animation continued, revealing the credits. The protagonist emerged from the water, sat on the land near a set of stairs. As the protagonist removed his swimming fins, a voice declared, "Stay alert. He'll be through here. I know it. I'm going to swat down a couple of bothersome flies." In the scene, the voice emanated from a man in the elevator, blonde and directing men in white protective suits. Following that, Solid Snake and the Colonel engaged in a conversation, with the Colonel instructing Kevin, the player, about using the select button for codec contact. The game finally commenced, and Kevin observed his in-game character, Solid Snake, in the area where he emerged from the water. Stairs in a lake-like water body were nearby. As Kevin guided his in-game character downstairs toward the floodwater, the camera zoomed closer to Solid Snake running through the flood. "I've got to admit, the graphics are much better than the first Resident Evil game they released," Kevin couldn't help but exclaim. Compared to Resident Evil 1 with blocky 3D character models, limited animation, static environments, and less interactive pre-rendered backgrounds, Metal Gear Solid I impressively addressed those issues. Not only did Metal Gear Solid I's graphics overcome the shortcomings of Resident Evil 1, but they also marked a significant leap in graphical improvement. Most of the 3D attempt gameplay problems in Resident Evil 1 were effectively solved, and in fact, Metal Gear Solid I even improved upon the positive aspects of Resident Evil's graphics. Metal Gear Solid I featured cutting-edge polygon counts for characters and environments, creating a more detailed world compared to Resident Evil 1's pre-rendered backgrounds. The game boasted smooth character animations and more. As expected of Kishin, they improved the graphics so much in just a little over a year. Kevin couldn't help but sigh. With that, Kevin accidentally acquired a ration in the floodwater, and then he walked upstairs. Having read the video game story manual and control manual for Metal Gear Solid I in Kishin Power magazine before heading to the store to buy it, Kevin found the controls simple. He guided his in-game character to crawl down and navigate through a blocking pipe. A map displayed in the corner of the screen helped Kevin track his in-game character's location. The gameplay involved Kevin controlling his character to stealthily move past patrolling soldiers in white suits. Spotting a patrolling soldier in a descending elevator, Kevin patiently waited until the soldier wasn't looking before stealthily entering the elevator. As Kevin successfully avoided the soldiers and sneaked behind them, he felt a rush of adrenaline. Although the patrolling soldier's AI wasn't very complicated and was easy to fool, Kevin remained unaware of that fact. Having played Metal Gear Solid I for quite a while, Kevin found the game to be quite enjoyable. In fact, he was more entertained by this game than the one he had played earlier, Gloomy, Land of Happiness. After a few days, many gamers in Tokyo purchased the latest video game from Tora Suzuki, Gloomy, Land of Happiness. However, after spending some time playing it, they noticed that, while the game was fun and the protagonist Gloomy was cool, clearing levels was too easy, and these easy levels were excessively prolonged. Even after hours of gameplay, Gloomy was unable to return to the L-Emotion Land. Despite varying opinions on Gloomy, Land of Happiness, Kishin's latest video game, Metal Gear Solid I, garnered significant attention. Compared to Gloomy, Land of Happiness, Metal Gear Solid I excelled in graphics and presented a more compelling storyline for most gamers. While Gloomy, Land of Happiness had an interesting concept and a refreshing idea, Metal Gear Solid I was more mature and appealed to boys or men, tapping into the fantasy of being a legendary soldier, a concept cherished by many men worldwide, embodied in the protagonist, Solid Snake. The game received praise for its cinematic cutscenes featuring impressive lighting and camera work, immersing players in the story. Professional video game developers also commended Metal Gear Solid I for its significant graphics leap, including smooth character animations, especially facial expressions and lip syncing, which were groundbreaking at the time. Chapter 294, Unreal Engine Progress. Shin was browsing the Kishin website, and in the forum, he saw the surging discussions of Metal Gear Solid I. He saw the praise of the users. Ctto Yori, amazing! The latest video game of Kishin has improved in graphics so much. Machida Tadao, yeah, the Metal Gear Solid I will be my favorite game. I played it for 2 days straight in my dorm. Kishin_Damao, I have to admit, the game is beyond any game released this year. There is no competition at all, except for a few, in just my opinion, just like the video game called Uprising from Namco. Reading the comments of the Kishin users about the latest video game Metal Gear Solid I, Shin smiled faintly. If Shin had merely stuck to replicating the graphics and elements of the video game Metal Gear Solid I from his previous life, the graphics wouldn't have received as much praise as they do now. With Shin providing guidance, the Kishin video game developers utilized the Unreal Engine to create Metal Gear Solid I, incorporating valuable data from video game entertainment companies and Tora Suzuki. The game development software underwent significant improvement, impressing even Shin, though it still fell short of his previous life's Unreal Engine. Nevertheless, the current Kishin Unreal Engine is remarkably advanced, even surpassing the standards of 1995. As a result, Metal Gear Solid I boasted superior graphics and gameplay compared to its counterpart in Shin's previous life. In that iteration, the game suffered from low-resolution textures leading to muddy visuals, especially at a distance. Additionally, the environment lacked detail and interactivity, even when compared to the pre-rendered backgrounds of Shin's previous life Resident Evil 1. In Shin's previous life, the video game Metal Gear Solid I faced issues such as frame rate drops during intense action sequences, limited lighting, and effects. However, most of these concerns were successfully addressed in the version of Metal Gear Solid I improved by Kishin in this parallel world. Utilizing Kishin's video game development toolkits and the advanced Unreal Engine, Shin guided the improvement process. The low-resolution textures were upgraded to high-resolution ones, instantly enhancing the visual fidelity of the game and bringing out details in environments, characters, and objects, creating a more immersive and impressive world. Furthermore, the addition of bump maps and normal maps further enhanced textures, adding depth and detail to surfaces like skin, clothing, and metal. Kishin also made significant improvements to the lighting and effects, addressing and surpassing the limitations faced by the previous version in Shin's previous life. Indeed, if Kishin were not concerned about the hardware capabilities of KS1, they could have further enhanced the video game using the technologies implemented in the Unreal Engine. Under Shin's guidance, Kishin's Unreal Engine incorporated PBR, or physically based rendering. This advanced computer graphics technique strives to replicate how light interacts with real-world materials in a physically accurate manner. Instead of relying on artist-defined light and material properties, PBR utilizes mathematical models based on real-world physics to determine how light bounces off and interacts with surfaces. The result is more realistic, dynamic, and visually stunning materials in games and other computer-generated imagery. PBR proves to be an excellent and useful computer graphics technique, significantly contributing to defining the physical objects and lighting in computer animation, thereby making it more realistic. For instance, PBR excels in precisely defining the materials used in the virtual environment. PBR defines materials through specific properties such as roughness, metallicness, albedo, base color, and emissivity, light emission. These properties play a crucial role in influencing how light interacts with the surface, giving rise to effects like diffuse reflection, specular highlights, and subsurface scattering. Moreover, PBR extends its impact to lighting and effects. Rather than merely introducing light sources, PBR takes into account environmental factors like ambient light, direct lighting, and indirect bounces. This approach results in a more nuanced and realistic lighting environment that dynamically interacts with materials, enhancing the overall visual experience. This computer graphics technique was initially researched in the early 80s, but Kishin, guided by Shin, enhanced the PBR technique and integrated it into the Unreal Engine. Honestly, if possible, Kishin could have utilized PBR for their video games. Unfortunately, KS1's hardware wasn't powerful enough to handle the complex calculations required for real-time PBR. The computational demands of accurately simulating light interactions with materials would have resulted in unacceptable frame rate drops and gameplay stutters. Moreover, implementing PBR for video games would have been considerably more time-consuming. Despite this limitation, Kishin can still apply PBR to their animation and movie projects requiring computer-generated imagery. Currently, the technologies implemented in the Unreal Engine are being utilized to develop the CGI needed for Kishin Pictures' Spider-Man film project. With the latest technologies and features in Unreal Engine, it is evident that the CGI used in the Spider-Man film project will surpass the quality of CGI seen in Mortal Kombat and Jurassic Park. Chapter 295, Entertainment Progress. In New York, Keishin Pictures was already filming the Spider-Man film project for a few weeks. The casting director felt that Tobey Maguire, who took the role of Peter Parker, was a really good choice. So far, Tobey Maguire performed the scenes of Peter Parker losing his Uncle Ben and crying exceptionally well. Tobey Maguire also embodied the nerdy side of Peter Parker quite convincingly. Even Stan Lee, observing Tobey Maguire's performance, nodded in acknowledgement while watching him act as Peter Parker. Meanwhile, Tobey himself was deeply engrossed in playing the role, giving his best performance. In Tokyo, Japan, alongside the latest news of video games set to release in November or December, anime fans were hyped about the upcoming anime, One Piece. Many anime fans stayed at home to watch One Piece on TV Asahi after some anime segments. As it was Saturday at this moment, many people staying home were either elementary or high school students. They chose to stay home and wait for the airing of One Piece on TV Asahi. Before One Piece, several animes had to be watched by the anime fans. And these anime segments were impressive, featuring famous anime replays of previously aired episodes like Pokémon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Earthbound, and finally, the recently released gag anime by Keishin, Shin-chan. The name Shin-chan meant nothing special to the public's ears, but to those close to Shinro, they felt that Shin named the anime after his nickname. However, the protagonist, Shin-chan, was nothing like Shinro at all. After Shin-chan, the much-anticipated first episode of One Piece would finally air, exciting many One Piece manga fans. Meanwhile, Shin himself was eager to see the anime fans' reactions to watching One Piece so early in 1995. If people from Shin's previous life knew he accelerated the creation of the One Piece story, having the manga released in 1993 and the anime adaptation airing in 1995, they'd probably worry about the animation quality. Shin, however, would just smirk at them in disdain. Shin had no concerns about the quality of the anime created by his subsidiary animation studios. In fact, the quality of the animes produced by these studios far surpassed those from his previous life. Why, you ask? Well, it's because the current anime studios in this 1995 parallel world focus strongly on traditional hand drawing, offer more diverse genre representation, and boast a bold and distinct artistic style. This emphasis results in characters that are more expressive and feel more animated. While these factors lead to slower production times for anime studios in this parallel world, Keishin's animation studios were equipped with digital tools provided by Keishin to expedite animation production. With 7 anime studios under Keishin, there is a broader and larger team working on the few anime projects. The introduction of digital tools significantly accelerated animation production while maintaining expressiveness and animation quality through the combination of digital tools and traditional hand-drawn techniques. Additionally, the animation studios under Keishin employed traditional hand-drawn techniques only for scenes that required such precision, opting for other animation methods and scenes that didn't necessitate those techniques. For these reasons, the anime produced by Keishin exhibited significantly higher quality, with the One Piece anime particularly standing out in Shin's eyes. Given that One Piece is a manga with a strong comedic element and characters expressing a wide range of emotions and actions, the animation studios under Keishin brought this to life. By combining traditional hand-drawn techniques with digital tools, scenes requiring heightened expression, actions, and animation were masterfully realized in the One Piece anime. After a prolonged wait, anime fans would finally be able to watch One Piece following the conclusion of the Shin-chan anime. The introduction of the One Piece anime mirrored the manga, with the resonant voice of the Japanese narrator stating, "Wealth, fame, power." The narration continued, depicting Gold Roger in a paper-laid animation sequence. The anime finally commenced, featuring Luffy on the barrel and his amusing interactions with Kobe, which elicited laughter from viewers unfamiliar with the manga. Even anime fans who weren't avid manga readers found delight in Luffy and Kobe's banter, and when Luffy confronted the portly and unattractive female pirate, a friendship blossomed between Luffy and Kobe. As the first episode of One Piece unfolded, even viewers typically disinterested in anime found themselves somewhat entertained. Once the initial episode of the One Piece anime concluded, many viewers, introduced to the story without its prior One Piece manga knowledge, became intrigued and eagerly anticipated the next episode. Following the One Piece anime, TV Asahi's ratings in the Kanto region surged further, causing some major TV channels to feel somewhat disheartened by the competition during weekend ratings. Consequently, TBS, NHK, Nippon, and others experienced lower ratings, particularly in the Kanto region. While they were not as despondent as in previous years when TV Asahi dominated both young and adult audiences with Kishin's captivating and highly popular animes, TBS, NHK, and Nippon managed to counteract by producing interesting animes. Although they successfully challenged TV Asahi and Kishin's anime dominance in the ratings for Japanese anime, they still trailed significantly. Chapter 296, Importance of Data. Tora Suzuki Conference Meeting. The executives were reviewing the report of their video game, Gloomy, Land of Happiness, and they were initially happy about their video game's first-day sales being quite high, even surpassing the estimated sales of other video game entertainment companies. But as the days passed, their video game Gloomy, Land of Happiness started to gradually decline in sales. Then, according to the report, the estimated sales of Kishin's Metal Gear Solid I were widely different compared to theirs. Although its estimated first-day sales were slightly lower compared to theirs, Kishin's video games surged in sales day by day, and if there was a decline, it was only a slight one. According to our survey, our video game, Gloomy, Land of Happiness, is pretty boring according to the gamers' opinions. It's because the levels were too easy, and they felt that some of the levels were repetitive. Additionally, the in-game character, Gloomy's return to the Elemotion Land, was dragged out with the easy and boring levels in the Magic World. The Tora analysis that leads a team reported out to the Tora Suzuki executives. Tisk. If your data scientist had done a good job, this wouldn't have happened, Shiko said to Idori Tanaka, who is sitting in the center of the table. That's right. If the data scientists of Tora had really analyzed the patterns and trends in gamers' behavior, we could have developed a better video game design and made better decisions. A Suzuki executive also exclaimed. It appears that the data scientists at Tora are slacking to not notice such a simple issue. Idori Tanaka, having heard the executives' complaints, mainly from Suzuki, felt a bit helpless. Nevertheless, he addressed them with a faint smile and calmness, saying, "Please calm down, everyone." He continued. We can't attribute everything to the data scientists' analysis of gamers' behavior. The video game industry was revived just 5 years ago, and there's still much to discover and learn. We also face limitations in storage and processing power, which hinders our ability to store and analyze large datasets. Analyzing even moderate amounts of data can be laborious and time-consuming. Since the video game industry is vastly different from several decades ago, having been revived only 5 years ago, predicting players' preferences is more challenging. These factors contribute to our data scientists being less able to predict player behavior. Upon hearing Idori Tanaka's explanations, the Tora Suzuki executives were momentarily silent, finding his reasoning sensible. If Shin were here today, he would probably be laughing uncontrollably. After all, if he were in the Tora Suzuki position, he would probably feel just as helpless, considering that the data scientists today have limited insights. With less data and simpler tools, the depth and granularity of player insights were constrained. Predicting player behavior and understanding what they truly enjoyed or disliked about the game has been quite challenging. Data-driven design approaches like A/B testing and dynamic difficulty adjustment were non-existent. Balancing gameplay, creating engaging challenges, and personalizing the experience would have relied heavily on intuition and guesswork. And there were more issues regarding video game development. While Kishin doesn't face most of the problems of Tora Suzuki now, as Kishin has access to the historical datasets of Shin's previous life through Shin, the existing competitor studios in this parallel world wouldn't have access to the massive historical datasets Shin currently possesses. Kishin would be replicating known successes, and the competitors' data scientists would be building analyses from scratch on a smaller player base. Without the wealth of data and algorithms that Shin processed, the competitors' data scientists might be less accurate in predicting player behavior and preferences. This could lead to misfiring game designs and marketing strategies. After a moment of silence, a Tora executive asked, "What about Kishin? How could most of their video games be so successful? Do they have better data scientists and advanced equipment for technical storage than us?" As soon as this question was brought up, almost everyone in the room looked at Idori Tanaka, who chuckled helplessly in response. "We don't exactly know why Kishin is so accurate in analyzing players' preferences, but I assume it's because Kishin was the one who revived the video game industry and released the early video games that entertained gamers when the industry was pretty much 90% dead. That's why gamers have become accustomed to Kishin's video games." Idori Tanaka provided a reasonable analysis. Oh? Is it like when the baby duck comes out of its egg, and the first one it sees is its mother? Seiki, who was listening while stroking his chin, exclaimed. Maybe, it was something like that. Idori Tanaka's smiling lips couldn't help but twitch in response. Bang! That is the most ridiculous explanation I've heard today. Shiko banged the table, surprising almost everyone in the room. He then stated, I don't agree with such explanations, even a kid wouldn't be fooled. If you're trying to cover up for your data scientists and your team's incompetence, come up with a better explanation. Upon hearing this, Idori Tanaka remained calm and replied, if my earlier explanations were hard for you to comprehend, Mr. Shiko Suzuki, then I don't know what to say anymore. Yet? Because you couldn't think of any other reasons anymore. Shiko chuckled disdainfully and muttered, I should have gone to the car design discussions at Suzuki instead. Suddenly, a voice was heard. Then let me suggest an idea. Almost everyone was surprised, including Idori Tanaka, as the one who spoke was his younger brother, Kenji Tanaka. Oh? What's your idea, Kenji? Idori Tanaka couldn't help but ask with a smile. Why don't we analyze Kishin's success instead of relying on our own? By closely studying Kishin's game design choices, player reception, and marketing strategies, we could gather valuable insights and adapt our own games accordingly, Kenji said with a smile. When everyone heard it, especially Taro Ikeda, couldn't help but chuckle and said, isn't that just copying Kishin again? Didn't it already backfire? I mean, we could explore the same genre, like side-scrolling, but completely copying will make it too obvious to the players. We are trying to build off our own originality, right? Almost everyone thought the same, and Idori Tanaka also shared the sentiment. Kenji Tanaka nodded in understanding and said, I'm not suggesting we copy them, what I'm trying to say is we'll learn from Kishin. While Kishin dominates the video game market, we could focus on identifying and catering to underserved niche markets in the existing player base, offering fresh experiences that Kishin might overlook. Chapter 297, GameStop. Many gamers in Tokyo started to have discussions about the video game Metal Gear Solid I, and video game entertainment companies also began taking notes of another video game by Kishin that was gaining attention. Like Tora Suzuki, other video game entertainment companies were also analyzing the latest successful or previous video games of Kishin, seeking inspiration to improve their own games. However, compared to other video game entertainment companies, Tora Suzuki is engaging in much more complex analysis. They are not only examining game design, gameplay, challenging levels, and player preferences but also exploring the market and potential aspects that Kishin might have missed. Tora Suzuki is committed to analyzing Kishin's video games comprehensively, incorporating suggestions from gamers themselves to enhance the games. Initially, Tora Suzuki analyzed Kishin's games like other companies, but influenced by Kenji Tanaka's opinion, they initiated a more intricate and careful analysis, aiming to understand gamer preferences and incorporate their suggestions. Currently, Tora Suzuki is scrutinizing game design, gameplay, potential improvements in missions, challenging levels, graphics, and more. They are also considering gamers' opinions in this comprehensive evaluation. So far, the graphics of Metal Gear Solid I have been outstanding. Even Tora Suzuki and other video game entertainment companies have started to wonder whether the VG Engine software is truly capable of such a feat. The pre-rendered cutscenes were well received as well. Regarding gameplay, gamers have responded positively to Metal Gear Solid I. Many feel that the difficulty is well balanced due to the availability of difficulty options. However, some gamers have expressed complaints about the difficulty of certain bosses, such as Metal Gear Rex, which inflicts high damage while the in-game character has limited damage output. Overall, gamers have mostly responded positively to the video game Metal Gear Solid I. On November 19, 1995, the highly anticipated horror video game by Tora Suzuki was finally released. Many people flocked to stores, including the emerging and rising video game store named GameStop. This video game store was somewhat of a mystery to those in the business world. As the video game distributor, the company GameStop had a CEO who was a former employee of Kishin. However, many doubted whether such an employee could establish such a company. Moreover, being a private company, business people assumed Kishin's involvement, but no one had proof. While this speculation persisted, gamers couldn't care less about whether the video game company was owned by Kishin, Tora, or Suzuki. They just wanted to play video games, and that was it. In front of a certain GameStop store, a red sports car came to a stop. Pedestrians on the sidewalks couldn't help but take a second look at the beautiful and luxurious car. A group of employees who had just finished a meal in a restaurant also noticed the sports car and started discussing. Wow! If I win the lottery, I'll buy that car. Ha ha ha, the lottery? Seriously? Just work hard for it, and soon, we'll be able to afford it. Work for it? Maybe. A 30-year-old man chuckled wryly. He added, maybe when I've worked hard enough, overworked to the point where I won't receive any money for it, and then I'll turn 50 or 60. If I ever make it to that age from working so much, then I'll buy a mansion and that car. When the salarymen heard it, they fell momentarily silent, and one of them remarked, we just finished celebrating our small success in the office, and now you're going to be so sarcastic here. Ha ha ha, sorry. Amidst the banter, a woman walked out of the sports car. She was a young woman, dressed in a gangero gal style. Wow! It's a gal. So pretty. The men discreetly glanced at the young woman who emerged from the sports car, unconsciously muttering their thoughts. Humph! The young woman snorted and strolled towards the video game store, GameStop. The people browsing in the store were a bit surprised by the presence of the stylish young woman. Meet Kazue Miyoshi, the granddaughter of the wealthy tycoon Sazuma Suzuki. Kazue has achieved significant success in the clubs and nightlife business, even becoming a small shareholder in Suzuki Trademark Entertainment, known for Suzuki video game production. Her presence here is to support the Suzuki business and to purchase their latest release, Religion of Nightmares. She actively contributed suggestions during the production process of the video game and is eager to see the final results. Ah, miss. Is there anything I can help you? A GameStop cashier asked shyly. I'm here to buy that game, yes. Religion of Nightmares. Kazue purposely exclaimed the game's name so that others could hear. The young men browsing games perked up their ears upon hearing her announcement. That video game? Young miss, I don't recommend such a game at all. The GameStop cashier shook his head and continued, I'll suggest a better horror game. Before the GameStop employee could finish, a young man who had just approached quietly interjected. Young miss, don't play that video game. Instead, try the horror video game Silent Hill. It's a horror game from Kishin, a reputable company. Yeah, I'll recommend that video game. The GameStop employee said with a nod, frowning at the young man who had just interrupted him. Meanwhile, Kazue, upon hearing their opinions, had her expression notably darkened. It's that video game from Shinro again. Kazue thought with a frown. Honestly, the reason she invested and entered the video game industry was because she recognized its profitability, seeing how wealthy her cousin Shinro Suzuki had become due to video games. She invested in the family business, Suzuki Trademark Entertainment, a video game production. However, despite her efforts, the video games from her cousin's company, Kishin, continued to dominate the market. Suzuki remained in the shadows, trailing behind Kishin, and this was a source of displeasure for Kazue. No. I don't like Kishin's video games, so just give me the video games from Suzuki, Kazue asserted with furrowed brows. But the GameStop employee attempted to persuade Kazue, yet her frowning expression halted his efforts. Simultaneously, Kazue grew a bit suspicious of the GameStop video game store. It seemed suspicious how insistent they were on recommending Kishin's video games. Unbeknownst to Kazue, the video game store was influenced by Kishin, but their recommendations were based on the positive responses from customers, not merely due to corporate influence. Chapter 298, Response. After a few days since the release of the video game Religion of Nightmares, most gamers' responses have been quite positive so far. The video game is genuinely scary, with the introductory story revolving around an in-game character who, as a journalist, investigates a cult for his next topic. However, he is kidnapped by the cult shortly thereafter. Locked in the basement and tied to a chair, the journalist manages to find sharp objects, cuts the ropes, and the gameplay begins. The in-game character embarks on a quest to discover hints for escaping the basement. After exploring for a while and visiting a specific area, a pre-rendered scene depicts a ghoul devouring a person. The in-game character can choose to ignore it or use the initially found sharp objects to kill the ghoul. Upon escaping the basement, gamers notice that the in-game character is now in a dark and spooky forest, marking the beginning of the real game. Various types of ghouls will attempt to eliminate the in-game character, and gradually, he will uncover clues about his location and the true nature of the cult he was entangled with. As the video game progresses, it becomes apparent that the cult is, in fact, the media company he works for. Religion of Nightmares garnered positive responses from many gamers and professionals, as well as video game reviewers. However, some critics noted its brevity, with the ability to finish the game in around 3 hours. On the downside, the game faced criticism for challenging bosses, repetitive monsters in certain areas, and a soundtrack that received only average reviews. Despite these drawbacks, gamers appreciated the fresh ideas inspired by Kishin's Resident Evil in the horror genre. Suzuki's data scientists demonstrated successful analysis of player preferences within the gaming industry, unlike Tora, whose latest game, Gloomy, Land of Happiness, received little acclaim. Tora's attempt to make an antagonist the protagonist in their ambitious video game didn't resonate well with players. While the idea behind Tora's concept was refreshingly innovative, even surprising Shin a bit, the execution of the video game fell short. Magazines, including Kishin Power, responded positively to Suzuki's video game, much to the surprise of gamers. Questions arose among casual gamers about how Kishin could endorse a competitor's game. What these casual gamers didn't realize was that Kishin didn't mind, as the success of Tora and Suzuki's games would contribute to Kishin's earnings through royalty fees. This income comes from the video game companies utilizing Kishin's beneficial software, VG Engine. While Religion of Nightmares garnered a positive response from many gamers, another horror video game has outshone it in terms of received acclaim and gradual popularity over these recent days. This standout game is another creation by Kishin, titled Silent Hill, surpassing both Suzuki's Religion of Nightmares and Kishin's own Resident Evil. Inside the Imperial Hotel in Minato Ward, Tokyo, in the most luxurious room, Kazue wore a frown as she scrutinized the video game CD cover of Silent Hill. A few days ago, Kazue played Religion of Nightmares for about half an hour and was quite satisfied with the outcome. She anticipated the game becoming a hit in the horror genre, given the positive feedback from gamers. However, after a few days, while Religion of Nightmares did receive a good response, it didn't surpass other horror video games. In the Top Video Games magazine, which compiles top 10 lists for each genre and an overall top 100 called all-time lists, Kishin's video games dominated the highly rated games, ironically. This season, the magazine presented its top 10 in the horror genre, featuring horror video games released thus far. In reality, horror genre video games were scarce, with only a handful released for both the 16-bit and 32-bit consoles. Following Kishin's Resident Evil, many entertainment companies ventured into creating horror video games. Come November, a few horror games debuted, but it was Suzuki's Religion of Nightmares and Kishin's Silent Hill that garnered the most attention. At this point, Kazue anticipated that Suzuki's horror video game, Religion of Nightmares, would secure the top spot in the autumn season's horror video game rankings. However, to her surprise, their game only claimed the second position. Kishin's Silent Hill outperformed Suzuki's Religion of Nightmares, receiving a higher rating in the rankings. Kazue suspected that the magazine's top lists were manipulated, thinking that top video games might have been paid by Kishin for favorable reviews of their video games. Frustrated, Kazue sought opinions from other video game magazines on Suzuki and Kishin's horror games released in November, only to find that they echoed Top Video Game magazine's publisher. In response, Kazue decided to purchase and play Silent Hill herself, skeptical that the game would genuinely affect her. Let's see how scary this game is. Kazue snorted as she inserted the Silent Hill CD into the KS1. Chapter 299, Silent Hill. After Kazue inserted the video game, the logo of KS1 and Kishin intro started. After that, the video game Silent Hill intro story animation started. It was a man driving a car, and beside him was a little girl. As the car was driving along the road, a young woman seemed to be walking in the middle of the road, causing the man to try to avoid her, but his car crashed instead. After that, the scene flashed white before the video game menu showed. After that, Kazue skillfully selected Start, and then the options of difficulty appeared. As Kazue has been a gamer for quite a while, she was no stranger to video games. When Kazue saw the options of difficulty, such as easy, normal, and hard, she snorted and said, I bet the difficulty doesn't matter anyway. Then she chose the hard difficulty. As Kazue also participated in the video game production of the Suzuki, she knew that with the limited capabilities of AI, the difficulty of the game and that the enemies are just following a certain pattern or something like that. She was not aware of the details, but she got the gist of it. But what Kazue didn't know was that the AI used in Silent Hill is similar to the AI used in Metal Gear Solid I, which is actually an adaptive AI. An adaptive AI adapts to players' strategies and enemy patrol routes. When a player repeatedly traverses an area, the enemy adjusts its approach to catch the player. In Metal Gear Solid I, the AI includes alert phases triggered by player detection, leading to actions like calling for reinforcements, changing patrol patterns, or initiating aggressive pursuit. Boss behavior also adds difficulty for the player. Similar mechanics are employed in Silent Hill, although its focus on psychological horror and atmosphere exploration makes the adaptive AI less overt. Nevertheless, the AI remains valuable for setting difficulty options, whether easy or hard. Although AI wasn't as advanced in this parallel world 1995, Kishin's AI for video game development, despite being developed in this era, was commendable. The adaptive AI used in Metal Gear Solid I was truly innovative for its time, specifically in 1995. Kishin stood out as an industry innovator, earning admiration from other video game entertainment companies that took notice of such AI advancements in Metal Gear Solid I. After Kazue selected the hard mode, the video game started, featuring the opening scene of a man stepping out of his already wrecked car. As he walked away from the car, he realized he was in an unfamiliar place. A caption appeared with the in-game character questioning his whereabouts. Kazue gained control of the in-game character and navigated through the foggy area. Furrowing her brows, she had to admit that the background atmosphere was quite eerie. Simultaneously, the graphics appeared superior to those in the video game Religion of Nightmares. However, she doubted whether Silent Hill would be as frightening as Religion of Nightmares. What puzzled her was how the KS1 hardware could handle graphics with seemingly numerous buildings in the background. She recalled Suzuki's video game developers attempting it, but the buildings and structures didn't load quickly enough. Since she lacked extensive knowledge of video game development, she didn't dwell on it. She continued to guide the in-game character forward, and after playing for a while, Kazue unknowingly became curious about the gameplay. Then, she spotted a girl in the distance, and the in-game character's voice exclaimed, "Cheryl? Is that Cheryl?" The pre-rendered scene depicted the in-game character following the girl and asking, "Where are you going?" "Cheryl, huh? Is she his daughter?" Kazue couldn't help but mutter as she observed the scene. However, the girl named Cheryl ran away, prompting the in-game character to exclaim, "Hey, wait, stop." The sounds of footsteps were noticeably audible along with the soundtrack. In the foggy area where there were no people at all, the sound of footsteps added a chilling and eerie atmosphere to the player's experience. Kazue, holding the controller, felt a slight chill, but she quickly distracted herself, repeating, "It's just a game." These were the words she often said to herself while playing the video game Religion of Nightmares. Yet, the foggy setting, coupled with the soundtrack of footsteps in Silent Hill, managed to chill Kazue even more. Then, Kazue guided the in-game character to follow the girl's direction, leading her into a dark alley. Kazue managed to have her in-game character acquire a torch, illuminating the eerie surroundings. The alley emanated creepy vibes, with blood on the floor and various frightening elements. The usually silent video game, accompanied only by the soundtrack of footsteps, introduced a suspenseful musical score. Suddenly, a bloody and terrifying figure hanging appeared, prompting the in-game character to exclaim, "What is this? What's going on here?" After that, humanoid monsters approached the in-game character, and due to this and the chilling soundtrack, Kazue almost tossed the controller. The monsters attacked the in-game character, prompting Kazue to guide the character to flee. However, a fence blocked the in-game character's path, leaving Kazue with no escape. "Damn it! Is this the end?" Kazue exclaimed, gritting her teeth. She witnessed the monsters embracing the in-game character, Harry Mason, accompanied by his groans. The scene shifted, with Harry Mason waking up in bed. Following that were pre-rendered scenes featuring Harry Mason and a policewoman. Unbeknownst to Kazue, she was gradually becoming engrossed in the video game Silent Hill. After playing for an hour, Kazue couldn't take it anymore and tossed the controller aside. "Damn it! Why are those mobs so hard to kill? Besides, I remember that there are no monsters patrolling in that area." Kazue couldn't help but complain, yet she still felt her heart throbbing in fear. Silent Hill is undeniably scary. As a woman proud to believe that no video games could scare her after playing Religion of Nightmares, Kazue found herself genuinely frightened. Uncertain whether to continue playing Silent Hill or not, she admitted that she wouldn't last long, if not for the fact that it was currently morning and the maid was watching nearby with curiosity. Chapter 300, AI Advancement. In the Kishin Electronics headquarters in Toshima Ward, and in the workspace of the employees, most of them were working seriously, but some of them were secretly reading the professional review of the Silent Hill in a magazine. Okazaki Masanori, reading the magazine, couldn't help but smile. He has been one of the team members who worked on the video game Silent Hill. Although he is just one of the many programmers of the game, it felt like it also gave Masanori a sense of achievement. At the same time, while he was working on the Silent Hill project, he was fortunate enough to meet the man of miracle, Shinro Suzuki. Masanori really admired the man. Although he is just as old as Shinro Suzuki, he was not jealous, but maybe a bit envious, but he never thought badly of the chairman. Shinro Suzuki was the miracle man of the video game industry, and Masanori, who became a fan of video games, admired Shinro Suzuki for quite a long time. Although there is a little doubt in his mind whether Shinro Suzuki was really the man Masanori thought him to be, that doubt disappeared after Masanori met the man himself during the production of the video game Silent Hill. During the production of the video game Silent Hill, the developers encountered a challenge with pre-rendered backgrounds. The buildings and structures were not loading quickly during testing. However, Shinro Suzuki stepped in to address the issue, and Masanori witnessed the solution. Suzuki suggested adding a foggy effect to the pre-rendered background, resolving the problem of slow loading without much deliberation. The game developers agreed with Chairman Shinro, and after implementing the fog effect, the pre-rendered background ceased to be a significant issue. As a result, players immersed themselves in the illusion that the in-game character explored surroundings surrounded by buildings and structures, an effect achieved through perception. Moreover, the foggy effect heightened the game's spookiness, enhancing the horror experience in this horror video game. Due to the illusion of buildings and structures in the pre-rendered background of the video game Silent Hill, many magazine reviews praised the graphics. They overlooked the foggy effect responsible for this illusion, instead commending the added touch of horror it brought to gamers playing Silent Hill. The gameplay of Silent Hill also garnered high praise, and Masanori felt acknowledged for his contribution as a programmer. In fact, Masanori wasn't the only one secretly reading magazine reviews of the video games they had programmed, some other programmers also indulged during their free time. The Silent Hill video game received acclaim, as did the game Religion of Nightmares from Tora Suzuki. Although Tora Suzuki still trailed behind, they were gradually trying to catch up. Some fans of Tora and Suzuki missed the days when the two companies competed in the video game industry. The two competitions, seemingly in a ring, exchanging blows with funny commercials making fun of each other, were dearly missed by Tora and Suzuki fans. Although Tora and Suzuki still used funny commercials to mock their competitor, the focus shifted. The gun was no longer aimed at each other, instead, they formed an alliance, directing their humor towards Kishin in their commercials. However, with Kishin's evident dominance in the video games industry, the rivalry wasn't as enjoyable for Tora and Suzuki fans, given their clear disadvantage. Regardless, many gamers found amusement in the spectacle of two large corporations attacking a smaller one, yet still unable to secure victory. Meanwhile, Tora Suzuki and other video game entertainment companies analyzed games like Metal Gear Solid I and Silent Hill and noticed the innovative use of AI in these video games. While the use of simple AI in video games began in the 1960s, as seen in arcade games like Pong and others. Pong, an early video game, employed this early AI and played a significant role in steering the computer industry toward AI research. During the period of 1990 to 1995, video games extensively integrated simple AI, particularly in aspects like enemy finding and path finding. Early AI primarily focused on basic enemy behavior, such as patrolling maze-like levels or chasing the player in simple patterns. Games like Pac-Man and Space Invaders from Kishin utilized these techniques to create challenging and dynamic enemy interactions. Additionally, AI played a crucial role in the adaptive difficulty of video games. Some games utilized AI to adjust difficulty according to player performance, making enemies faster or more aggressive as the player progressed, providing a sense of learning and challenge. The majority of video games, whether designed for consoles or computers, incorporated AI. It's evident how pivotal AI technologies are in the video games industry, and more broadly, in almost every sector relying on computers and related technologies. The AI techniques employed in the latest Kishin video games greatly impressed other video game entertainment companies, showcasing Kishin's innovations in the video game industry. While other companies marveled at the AI in the latest Kishin video games, Shin pondered deeply while playing chess on his office computer. As of 1995, the chess AI was not as advanced as in his previous life, yet Shin was aware that, in terms of AI development, IBM currently held the leading position. During this period, IBM possessed a technology called Deep Blue, initially known as Deep Thoughts. In 1995, the Deep Blue prototype participated in the 8th World Computer Chess Championship. In just about a year or so, Deep Blue would go on to challenge various chess professionals, including the world champion, Garry Kasparov.
Thanks for listening.